Chapter 5095. Well, they were interested in the Archaic Alliance at first. But after seeing you, a genius from the Archaic Alliance, they all felt that the Archaic Alliance was just SOSO. They were afraid that they would end up like you, and refused to participate in the disciple selection meeting. So you can't blame me for this. Lenny said seriously. I see. You're the one who ruined the image of our Archaic Alliance. How dare you bring this up? I'd like to tell the Alliance about your achievements, Xue Jianfeng. Xinijia added insult to injury. Xue Jianfeng almost vomited blood. He pointed at Lin Yi and said, "What about those unconscious female cultivators? You can't say that they didn't want to come. Can you? They could only wait for death if they stayed in the secular world. Only by going to the Archaic Alliance can they have a chance to recover. You forced them to stay in the secular world because of your own selfish desire. You're not going to blame it on me, are you? You're so smart. I really have to blame it on you. I'm their guardian, but I don't trust your character. If I send them to the Archaic Alliance, who knows if you'll do something shady." Lenny looked like he was looking at a scumbag. Fuck. Xue Jianfeng really coughed up blood this time. Everyone was staring at him with all sorts of weird looks, and he almost fainted on the spot. He was just using this opportunity to annoy Lin Yi. How did he turn into a beast that everyone hated and hated? Looking at Lin Yi's disgusting face, Xue Jianfeng wanted to fight with this bastard to the end. Unfortunately, he did not have the strength to do so. There was only one way to deal with Lin Yi, which was to mobilize all the disciples of the Snow Sword School to attack him. However, Lin Yi was the senior ancestor of the Green Cloud sect in the North Island. Xinijia would definitely not stand by and do nothing. What could he do? Are you done with the farce? If you're done, get out of my way. Don't get in the way of me hosting the disciple selection meeting. Xinijia glared at Xue Jianfeng. Xue Jianfeng let out a cold snort. He knew that he wouldn't be able to obtain any benefits if this went on. He could only awkwardly retreat to the side and think of another plan. Then I'll go back first. Lingshan blinked at Lin Yi. She was here purely as the vice director of the investigation department to maintain order, just like Chen Tian and the others. She didn't even think about joining the Archaic Alliance. If she really wanted to, she could have just gone to Sky Class Island with Lin Yi. Why go to the Archaic Alliance? Just when Lin Yi was about to nod, Xinijia suddenly said, "Grand Uncle, Deputy Director Song doesn't have to leave in a hurry. It's not too late to make a decision after hearing the rules of the second round." "Oh, let's wait for a while." Lin Yi looked at Xinijia in surprise. He didn't care much about the Archaic Alliance's disciple selection. As long as both sides coexisted peacefully, he didn't pay much attention to the selection process. From what Xinijia said, could it be that the second round of selection wasn't as simple and direct as the first? Xinijia nodded and turned to the crowd. "Everyone, the fact that you've passed the first round of selection is an affirmation of your potential. Although it doesn't mean that you've joined the Archaic Alliance. As a reward for passing the first round of selection, I believe that you'll benefit a lot from the second round of selection, regardless of whether you're successful or not." Everyone's eyes lit up. They were a little confused about the first round, and they didn't even know what Xinijia was looking at. The reward that Xinijia was talking about made them excited. The Archaic Alliance couldn't possibly be something simple. Could it be that they were going to give each of them a treasure from the Archaic Alliance? However, what Xinijia said next quickly shattered their fantasies and made them even more excited. "Everyone, please don't misunderstand. I won't give you any treasures or resources, but I'll give you an opportunity that you've been dreaming of, a chance to break through to the Foundation Establishment realm." Foundation Establishment realm. The crowd was in an uproar. Everyone's breathing became heavy. Even if they had no concept of the Foundation Establishment realm in the past, after the emergence of the Archaic Alliance, everyone knew what it meant. It was the legendary Heavenly Tao. Not only the secular cultivators, but even Lin Yi couldn't help but be moved. He didn't expect the Archaic Alliance to be so generous. He had underestimated them before. Don't be surprised. The Archaic Small Underworld is the place that every cultivator dreams of. To become an official disciple of any archaic sect, you must at least have the strength of the Foundation Establishment realm. Now that you've passed the first round of selection, you're now the prospective disciples of your respective sections. You'll be given the beginner's mental cultivation method of your respective sects, and you'll be going to a place with abundant spiritual chi to break through to the foundation establishment realm. If you're able to break through before the archaic passage closes, you'll become an official disciple. Xi and Ijia introduced. Beginner's mental cultivation method? We already have our own mental cultivation method. It's useless to give us another mental cultivation method, right? The secular cultivators couldn't help but wonder. Everyone knew that one's mental cultivation method couldn't be changed at will, especially if one were to practice two mental cultivation methods at the same time. The consequences would be unimaginable. If it's light, one would be injured, and if it's severe, one would be possessed by the devil or even die on the spot. Under normal circumstances, you can't change your mental cultivation method. However, when you've reached the foundation establishment realm, or more accurately, when you're in the process of breaking through to the foundation establishment realm, you'll have the opportunity to change your mental cultivation method without any side effects, Xi and Ijia explained. The crowd finally understood. Then, someone raised his hand and asked, "What if we fail to break through to the foundation establishment realm?" Of course, you'll be eliminated. However, even so, you won't suffer any loss. At least you've obtained a beginner's mental cultivation method of your respective sections. Although it's impossible to break through to the foundation establishment realm with just these beginner's mental cultivation methods alone, it's definitely more advanced than your original mental cultivation method. That's a great reward in itself, Xi and Ijia said with a faint smile. The crowd instantly let out a sigh of relief. Each of them felt like they were hit by a pie that fell from the sky. It was a pleasant surprise to receive a mental cultivation method that could help them break through to the foundation establishment realm for no reason. When will the archaic passage close? Another person raised his hand and asked. Chapter 5096. Hearing this, Lenny could not help but feel a little emotional. This situation was so similar to the time when they first arrived at the Heavenly Stage Island. However, they joined the Welcome Pavilion and were required to break through to the foundation establishment realm within a year. He did not expect the Archaic Alliance to do the same. It would be strange if these two places did not have a deep relationship. After listening to Xi and Ijia's words, the crowd of cultivators in the secular world had different expressions. Some were eager to give it a try, while some were frowning. No matter how they looked at it, breaking through to the foundation building realm in 10.5 months was not an easy task. But no matter what, Xi and Ijia was right. This was a rare opportunity. Alright, next, this old man will bring everyone to a good place. Everyone, please follow the leading senior brothers of your respective sections. When we arrive at the destination, they will teach you the basic mental cultivation method. If you have any doubts or questions, you can ask them. Let's go. Xi and Ijia nodded at Lin Yi and brought everyone to the back hall. It was where the Archaic Passage's teleportation formation was located. Is the place you're talking about in the primordial underworld? Lin Yi asked curiously. Granduncle Master, you misunderstood. Although this teleportation formation is part of the Archaic Passage, the other end is not connected to the Archaic underworld. It is connected to a very special transfer point, Xi and Ijia replied. Oh. Lin Yi raised his eyebrows slightly. This was unexpected. All right, the leading senior brothers of your respective sects will be responsible for the teleportation. As for the spiritual jades required for the teleportation, it will naturally be the responsibility of each sect. Let's begin, Xi and Ijia said to everyone. In principle, there was no limit to the number of disciples that could be sent to the immemorial sect. However, it did not mean that the more the better. That was because the more people sent, the more spiritual jades needed to be used. For a sect like the Snow Sword School that chose 4 prospective disciples at once, including Xue Jianfeng, who was the senior brother leading the team, they would need to use up 10 spiritual jades for each teleportation. This was not a small amount. Therefore, as long as they were not so rich that they had nowhere to spend their spiritual jades, Lin Yi basically had a very high standard for the selection of disciples. Not only did they need to have suitable aptitude, but they also needed to have sufficient strength. Otherwise, it would be useless if they could not break through to the Foundation establishment realm within 10.5 months. It was very rare that 33 cultivators from the secular world could stay in the first round. While waiting in line, Lin chatted with the cultivators from the secular world. After all, many of them were disciples from sects that he was familiar with, such as the Ice Palace, Snow Valley, Dark Palace, etc. Even though they were not close, it was still necessary for Lin to give them some advice. Of course, not all sects in the secular world were on good terms with Lin. For example, the disciples of the Five Elements sect had a very complicated impression of Lin. Although they were once enemies, they had no choice but to lower their heads to Lin. Otherwise, Lin alone could wipe out their entire sect. Not to mention that Lin was now the leader of all sects in the secular world. Making an enemy of Lin was equivalent to making an enemy of all sects in the secular world, and even the Immemorial Alliance. Don't forget that he was Xianijia's martial uncle. That kind of situation made people shudder with fear. Seeing that Lin was chatting happily with the disciples of the Ice Palace and Snow Valley, the others couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed. They wanted to hug Lin Yi's thigh, but what if Lin ignored them? However, when some people braced themselves and came closer, they found that Lin didn't reject them at all. He taught some cultivation skills and experience to the disciples of the Ice Palace and Snow Valley. He didn't deliberately avoid other cultivators in the secular world. Whether they were from sects or families that he was once enemies with, he treated them equally. Even if these people raised doubts, he would patiently answer them. To put it bluntly, this was a matter of level. If it was before he went to the Heaven Stage Island, Lin might have a little prejudice. But now, in Lin Yi's eyes, the sects in the secular world, including the Five Elements sect, were no different from other sections. As a mysterious Ascension Realm master, if he still cared about this little grudge, then he would be too calculative. As a result, almost all the 33 people who passed the first round of selection gathered around Lin. This kind of opportunity to listen to the cultivation experience of a master at such a close distance was very rare, especially when the other party was an abnormal monster like Lin. A casual word of advice from him might be worth 10 years of hard work for these people. Everyone listened with great interest. Lin didn't hide anything from them. As long as it didn't involve his secret trump card, he basically answered all the questions. With his mysterious Ascension realm, he answered questions from the Foundation establishment realm. It was definitely a strategically advantageous situation. Many times, even Xianigia, who was next to him, was amazed. Although he was an early Gold Core realm master, his knowledge and vision were much worse than Lin Yi's. Although these things that Lin Yi said were mainly aimed at the Foundation establishment realm, even he could benefit a lot from it. No wonder he's the Grandmaster who has existed since ancient times. Even if his strength is only at the great completion of Foundation establishment realm, because of his primordial spirit, his knowledge and foundation may not even be comparable to that of the Supreme Elder. Xianigia sighed in his heart. He was already very sure about Lin Yi's identity, and now he was even more certain. Many things could be faked and deceived, but the Foundation could never be deceived. Xianigia secretly sighed. However, the senior brothers who led the other primordial sects couldn't stand it anymore. Although it was only the first round of selection, and these cultivators from the secular world were only considered as prospective disciples, and it was still unknown whether they could stay in the future, they were still people from their sections. Even if they wanted to ask for advice, they should ask them. Why did they all go to Lin Yi? Hehe, since President Lin is so helpful, why don't you just teach us the entry-level mental cultivation method of our sects as well? Seeing this, Xue Jianfeng felt awkward. He had not calmed down yet. Even if he couldn't make Lin Yi suffer any substantial loss, it would be good to taunt him to vent his anger. Not to mention that he could also sow discord. As soon as he said this, the senior brothers who led the other sects frowned and said with dissatisfaction, "Martial Uncle Xin, this Lin Yi is from your Green Cloud sect in the North Island. Isn't it against the rules to draw our prospective disciples so blatantly?" Chapter 5097. Crooked Theory? Exanegia was savoring the cultivation insights that Lin Yi had just shared. When he heard Lin Yi's words, he was immediately amused. You guys actually think that what Marshall Granduncle said is crooked theory? Isn't it? All the sects in the Archaic Alliance have pretty much the same explanation on the cultivation of the Foundation establishment realm. This is the ironclad truth that has been continuously proven for thousands of years. Marshall Uncle Xian, why don't you tell us? Which one of the things he just said is in line with it? Shui Jianfeng sneered. The senior brothers of the other sects also nodded. Based on their understanding of the Foundation establishment realm, what Lin Yi had just said was deviant and completely different from the mainstream theory of the Archaic Alliance. It couldn't be that Lin Yi was the only one who was right, and the entire Archaic Alliance was wrong, right? Oh, what did the Archaic Alliance say? Lin Yi was a little curious. Apart from some of his personal cultivation insights, most of what he had just said was actually the mainstream understanding of the Heaven Stage Island, not just his own opinion. The other cultivators in the secular world looked at each other. Those who were a little more pessimistic immediately wanted to retreat, and looked at Lin Yi with a little more suspicion. It turned out that it was all crooked theory. I thought it was some priceless advice. Marshall Granduncle, what you just said is indeed different from the mainstream understanding of the Archaic Alliance. Exanegia said truthfully. So it's really misleading. I was wondering why he would be so kind to share cultivation insights with us. Several disciples of the Five Elements sect immediately distanced themselves from Lin Yi, looking as if they were almost fooled by him. However, what Marshall Granduncle said just now is not crooked theory. It's an original opinion that hits the nail on the head. In many aspects, it's much more brilliant than the mainstream understanding of our Archaic Alliance. It can be said to be enlightening. Even the disciples benefited a lot after listening to it. It's just that some people don't know what's good for them. Exanegia changed the topic. Oh, I see. Lin Yi immediately understood that the level of the Heaven Stage Island was much higher than that of the ancient small Jianghu. The gap between the two was not only the strength of the top masters, but also the theoretical foundation. Just like the theoretical foundation of modern science, and the theoretical foundation of modern science, there was a natural generational gap between the two. People with a higher level like Exanegia could still understand the abstruseness of it, but in the ears of Shui Jianfeng, a master in the foundation establishment stage, it was like a deviant heresy. What? You don't know what's good? Shui Jianfeng choked for a moment, then burst into wild laughter, as if he had heard the funniest joke in the world. He laughed so hard that he was rocking back and forth and hammering the ground. Gasping for breath, he pointed at Lin Yi and said, Marshall Uncle Xian, are you going to say that what he said is right, and what our Archaic Alliance has refined for thousands of years is wrong? Even if he's from your Green Cloud sect in the North Island, even if you want to protect him, please use your brain a little bit. Do you really think we're so easy to fool? That's right. In front of so many prospective disciples, Marshall Uncle Xian, you have to take responsibility for your words. I'm afraid Marshall Uncle Xian can't bear the consequences of misleading the disciples, right? The senior brothers from the other sects echoed. You're really playing the lute to a cow. Exanegia was speechless. These people's realm was not high enough, and their thinking was rigid. They only thought that what they had learned before was the golden rule, and did not understand the wisdom of Lin Yi's advice at all. Even if he argued with them at this time, it would be useless. They would only think that he was unprincipled and protective. Lin Yi did not care. He shared these cultivation experiences purely out of kindness. It was their business whether they listened or not. As for what the leading senior brothers from the archaic sects thought, it was even less of a concern. I think you're just at your wits' end, aren't you? Shui Jianfeng smiled proudly. After being provoked by him, the leading senior brothers from other archaic sects looked at Lin Yi with obvious hostility. Anyone who met such a guy who deliberately tried to mislead their prospective disciples would feel disgusted, as if they had eaten a fly. Unfortunately, Exanegia was here after all. Although they were dissatisfied, they dared not do anything to Lin Yi. Otherwise, if he provoked them a little more, they might directly take action. What are you still standing there for? Continue to listen to his crooked brainwashing? Hurry up and come over here. The leading senior brothers from various archaic sects frowned and scolded their prospective disciples. Not only the people from the Five Elements sect, but the other practitioners from the secular world were also wavering after hearing the words just now. At this moment, facing the scolding of their respective archaic sects, they naturally had no resistance. They walked away without hesitation. When they looked at Linny again, there was no longer any gratitude and admiration in their eyes. Instead, there was some disdain and hostility in their eyes. At this moment, only Lung Lung, Lingshan, and 3 other practitioners from the secular world remained by Lin Yi's side. They were all prospective disciples of the Blue Cloud sect in the North Island. Although they were hesitant after hearing the words just now, since Xianijia said that it was a unique insight that hit the nail on the head, they basically believed it. Of course, even if they didn't believe it, they couldn't stay away from Lin Yi. After all, Xianijia was right beside them. Are you all blind? Have you all forgotten about the contributions that Lin Yi has made for the secular world? Do you think he'll harm you? Lingshan gritted her teeth in anger. She didn't mind if she was wronged, but she couldn't bear to see Lin Yi being wronged. Lung Lung also felt wronged for Lin Yi, but she didn't say anything. Instead, she looked at the leading senior brothers as if she was looking at an idiot. What Lin Yi said just now wasn't that profound. As long as she thought about it carefully, even a mid-stage foundation establishment practitioner like her could understand some of the profoundness in it. Many of the things he said didn't conflict with the mainstream knowledge of the Archaic Alliance. It was just that it hit the nail on the head. Did these people have pig brains? We don't see any contributions he has made for the secular world. He's just using this opportunity to show off his power. We're not idiots. A Five Elements sect disciple retorted with a cold smile. He was now a prospective disciple of the Snow Sword sect. What he said was actually surrendering to Shuejianfeng. As long as he could successfully join the Snow Sword sect in the future, what could Lin Yi do to him? Although the new head of the Five Elements sect had been changed to the Xuanzhen ancestor, the remaining disciples were mostly Xianzhen ancestors' people, especially those who were strong. It was already good enough for the new disciples of the Xuanzhen ancestor to be able to become mystic class practitioners. So naturally, they didn't like Lin Yi from the beginning. Now that there was a chance to mock him, they naturally wouldn't let it go. Chapter 5098. Yen Zhongding, you can eat whatever you want, but you can't say whatever you want. Your Five Elements sect has been in trouble before, and it's all thanks to Lin Yi and the Archaic Alliance that we're all safe and sound. Isn't that a contribution? Even if it's a dog, it should at least wag its tail after receiving a favor from someone, right? Lingshan raged. Who are you calling a dog? You dare insult a prospective disciple of the Snow Sword sect in front of me? Can I take that as a provocation? Shuejianfeng said unkindly. I didn't say a dog. Listen up. I'm saying that some people are worse than dogs. Lingshan raised her neck. Shuejianfeng might have some authority in front of the other practitioners, but to people like her and Shintian, he wasn't threatening at all. Yo, you're getting better at insulting people, aren't you? But out of respect for life, we can't insult dogs like that. They're humans' best friends after all. Lin Yi teased. As for Shuejianfeng and Yin Zhongding, he didn't care about them at all. You! Shuejianfeng gritted his teeth in anger. But when he saw Lin Yi looking at him, he immediately felt afraid. It was fine to sow discord, but if he went too far and made Lin Yi angry, he'd be in trouble again. He could only snort coldly and say, What's right and wrong is right and wrong. I don't care to argue with you. That's right. It's all thanks to Senior Brother Shue's words. Otherwise, all of us would have been kept in the dark by a certain person's crooked ways. If we were to really follow his words, wouldn't we end up suffering from chi deviation? Whoever follows this kind of person will only be unlucky. The rest of the practitioners from the common world also had a look of fear on their faces. Training was no small matter, and any wrong step could lead to serious consequences. Even if it was just a small detail, if they really accepted all of Lin Yi's insights, not to mention their future, they'd be thankful if they didn't go berserk halfway through their training. On one side was Lin Yi's personal heresy, and on the other side was the mainstream knowledge of the Archaic Alliance. It was clear which side to choose. Lingshan was about to retort when Lin stopped her, saying faintly, "My followers are indeed unlucky, having to eat all sorts of random pills all the time. Like those foundation-building pills that allow you to level up after that. I was planning on giving them to you guys to try, one for each of you. But now I can only give them to those 3 unlucky bastards." After that, Lin suddenly had 3 elixirs in his hand, and he handed them to the 3 prospective disciples of the Blue Cloud sect in the North Island one by one. Foundation-building pill? Supreme quality? Xue Jianfeng's eyelids twitched when he saw this. This was a pill that was very difficult to buy in the Archaic Alliance, and top-grade pills were even rarer. Although it was useless to a Foundation establishment Great Circle expert like him, it didn't change the fact that this was a treasure that couldn't be bought even if one wanted to. It wasn't just Xue Jianfeng. The other disciples of the Archaic sects were all shocked, looking at Lin Yi as if he was a monster. Just who was this guy, giving away 3 supreme quality foundation-building pills just like that? "You 3, hurry up and thank the Grand Master. Don't you know that as long as you take the pill, you'll definitely be able to break through to foundation building?" Even Exanijia couldn't help but swallow his saliva. Even the Grand Elder didn't seem to have such generosity, right? "Thank you, Grand Master." The 3 prospective disciples came to their senses and quickly thanked him. Just now, they didn't believe in Lin Yi, but in the blink of an eye, they were hit by a pie in the sky. Happiness came too suddenly. The expressions of Yin Zhongding and the others were very interesting. According to what Lin Yi said, if they had stayed with Lin Yi just now, they would also be able to get a supreme quality foundation building pill. But now they had given up this opportunity. For a moment, everyone's resentful eyes fell on Xue Jianfeng. It was all because of this meddlesome guy. Even if Lin Yi's cultivation experience was crooked, it didn't really affect them, because the senior disciples of each sect would definitely retell them the mainstream knowledge of the Archaic Alliance. At that time, they just had to listen to the senior disciples. If they had stayed with Lin Yi for a little longer, they would have been able to get a supreme quality foundation building pill. According to Exanigia, this was equivalent to a guaranteed entry to foundation building. Such a great opportunity was ruined because of Xue Jianfeng's words. The supreme grade foundation building pill that was in their hands flew away. If everyone didn't feel resentful, then there would be a problem. Right now, even their intestines were green with regret. Not only these prospective disciples, but in fact the senior disciples of each sect were also very resentful. Supreme quality foundation building pill meant ready-made new disciples in the foundation building stage, which meant that their mission was completed directly. When they returned, they would receive all kinds of rewards from the sect. Now it was all for naught. Being stared at like this by everyone, Xue Jianfeng's expression immediately changed. If there was a hole in the ground, he would have already crawled into it. He tried so hard to sow discord, but in the end, Lin Yi casually gave away 3 supreme quality foundation building pills. Instead, he became the target of public criticism. How could he live like this? Fortunately, the teleportation circle had already been activated. Xue Jianfeng quickly called Yin Zhongding and the others and teleported away. As for the others, they could only look at the 3 supreme quality foundation building pills enviously while waiting in line to be teleported away. They were drooling and cursing Xue Jianfeng at the same time. It was all his fault for doing something unnecessary. Lin Yi and the others stayed with Exanijia until the end. Other than the 3 prospective disciples chosen by the Green Cloud sect in the north, Exanijia purposely left 2 more spots for Lin Yi and Lingshan. As for the others, they could only stay in Shenangjia for the time being. After all, the spiritual jades were limited. Lung Lung was a little reluctant. She was neither a senior disciple nor a prospective disciple. Theoretically, she should stay outside. She had only reunited with Lin Yi for a few days, and they had to be separated again. It was inevitable that she would feel a little jealous. At this moment, Lin Yi suddenly waved his hand and called her over. He smiled at Exanigia, who had a troubled look on his face, and said, "It's all right. I'll pay for the spiritual jades of the Green Cloud sect in the north. Since you're a Grand Master, You should act like one. After saying that, Linny handed over a bag of spiritual jades. Exainegia took it, and was instantly stunned. There were 20 to 30 pieces of spiritual jades in the bag. This Grand Master had been empty-handed all this time. How did he make them? Chapter 5099. Forgive me for asking, but where did you get so many spiritual jades? Is there a spiritual jade mine in the secular world? Exainegia could not help but ask in shock. Spirit jades aren't something that only exists in the ancient Jianghu. Linny smiled mysteriously without denying. Exainegia could not help but gasp. Linny was referring to the Heaven Stage Island. But to him, it sounded like there was a spiritual jade mine in the secular world. It was an unprecedented miracle that there was a spiritual jade mine in the secular world, where the spiritual chi was so thin. After being stunned for a while, Exainegia finally recovered and said gratefully, "Since you're so generous, it would be impolite for me to refuse. Don't worry, I have plenty of them." Linny smiled casually, which shocked Exainegia again. He looked at Linny with even more respect. To a certain extent, wealth was also a reflection of one's strength. He had just given away 3 supreme-grade foundation establishment pills, and now he gave away a pile of spiritual jades. He did not expect this Grandmaster to be a god of wealth. Exainegia suppressed his shock, and waited for Linny and the rest to stand in the teleportation portal. Exainegia immediately activated the portal, and the scenery in front of him changed drastically. Linny thought the transit station was still deep in Shenangjia, but it was a small island instead. Apart from a few similar islands nearby, the rest of the area was covered by the sea without any landmarks. It was impossible to tell where this place was. However, one thing was for sure. This place was definitely not the secular world, because the spiritual chi here was rather dense. It was not something that could be found in the secular world. This is the Archaic Sea region, which is also the transit station between the secular world and the archaic underworld. Grandmaster, please take a look. The portal opposite is the archaic passage that connects to the archaic underworld, Exainegia introduced. Linny looked over and found a similar portal not far away. He could not help but ask, "Are you going to let them break through to the foundation establishment realm here?" That's right. The density of spiritual chi here is similar to the archaic underworld. It's enough for them to break through to the foundation establishment stage. Exainegia nodded. Not necessarily. If there was no time limit, it wouldn't be a problem for them to cultivate here for a few decades. But now they only have 10.5 months. How can it be easy to break through to the foundation establishment stage with just this bit of heaven and earth spiritual chi? Linny shook his head without end. As far as he was concerned, unless he gave these cultivators from the mortal world medicinal pills, like the foundation building pill. Otherwise, the chances of success in the end were next to nothing. Just relying on this bit of heaven and earth spiritual chi is indeed not enough. However, there are dozens of spiritual eyes on these islands, and the density of spiritual chi is at least dozens of times higher than normal. Let them cultivate beside the spiritual well for 10.5 months. If they still can't reach the foundation establishment realm, then it means they're not fated with the Archaic Alliance, Exainegia said with a smile. Spiritual eye? Linny was stunned. That's right. Martial Granduncle, please follow me. Exainegia immediately led the way. There were a few small wooden boats docked at the side of the island. While they couldn't withstand much wind and waves, the islands were only a few miles apart. It was more than enough for them to travel between the islands. The senior brothers and prospective disciples from the archaic sects that came earlier were nowhere to be seen. Evidently, they had gone to look for their own spiritual eyes. Under Exainegia's lead, Linny and the others quickly found a spiritual eye on one of the nearby islands. It was on the beach. At first glance, it looked like an inconspicuous sand dune, but once they walked to the side, they could instantly feel the extremely dense heaven and earth spiritual chi. Even Linny couldn't help but be amazed. The conditions here were even comparable to those training caves on Sky-class Island. Really? The chi here is so dense, it's so refreshing. It's so comfortable. Lingshan had never experienced such dense chi before. If it weren't for Exanigia and the others, she would have soaked herself in the sand right there and then. That feeling was definitely comfortable from head to toe. Even Lung Lung, who came with them, had a face full of enjoyment. There weren't many spiritual eyes, even in the small Jianghu of the archaic sects. Disciples like them who came out to train in the common world usually wouldn't stay here and occupy the spiritual eyes, unless there were special circumstances. Otherwise, most of them wouldn't want to waste their time in the common world. They would probably stay here for the whole year to train. Then, those prospective disciples from the common world wouldn't be able to do anything. This island is reserved for the Green Cloud sect of the North Island. I've seen it. There's a spring on the other side. Marshal Granduncle, you can bring them there to have a look, Exanigia said considerately. Linny nodded. He immediately brought Lingshan and Lung Lung to the other side. It was exactly the same as the previous one. This place is really nice. Island beach and a spiritual eye with such dense chi. It feels like I'm on vacation. Lingshan buried herself in the sand and stretched her body without caring about her image. On the other side, Lung Lung started meditating. It seemed like she was using this rare opportunity to train properly. Her attitude was much more proper than Lingshan's. Linny couldn't help but laugh. He couldn't blame Lingshan for being so lazy. After all, she wasn't like Lung Lung. Every bit of Lung Lung's strength came from her own hard work. It could be said that meditating had already become a habit of hers. Lingshan's sky-class full-cycle strength was purely given to her by Linny. Sitting in the position of the vice director of the Supernatural Investigation Department and working hard was the life she was most used to. Since we're done with the Archaic Alliance, why don't you just take a break? It's rare for us to have a vacation together, Linny suggested with a smile. Okay. Lingshan agreed immediately. She then asked, what about the others? You're such a silly girl. You're so honest. Linny shook his head speechlessly. This silly girl clearly wanted to spend some alone time with him. Even though there was an extra Lung Lung now, it was still much better than having a bunch of people squeezed together. He didn't expect her to think of everyone at the first moment. He really didn't know if she was naive or simple-minded. Is it wrong? Lingshan was confused. After a while, she suddenly slapped her head and said, oh yeah, if Wu Qintian and the others come too, then there'll be no one to take care of Ming Yao and the others. Chapter 5100. Yes, hurry up, Lingshan urged. Linny nodded and immediately ran to inform Exanigia. Exanigia agreed on the spot. As the leader of the team, he had this privilege. Moreover, this island belonged to the Blue Cloud sect of the North Island, so it wouldn't affect other primeval sections. Moreover, Linny could provide the spiritual jades needed for the teleportation. To him, this was just a simple favor, so he didn't have to make it difficult for him. Linny teleported out immediately and called Qintian and the others, telling them to come over. He would pick them up when they arrived at Shenangjia. Soon a large group of people gathered on the island. As expected of the Grand Master, to be able to find so many sky-class full perfection masters in the common world. I'm impressed. Exanigia was stunned when he saw Qintian and the others. He was glad that Linny was the god of wealth. Otherwise, he would go bankrupt if he had to use spiritual jades to teleport all these people. Linny smiled. If he were to tell him that he was the one who raised everyone's strength, this cheap disciple's eyes would pop out. After the shock, Exanigia was overjoyed. Although Linny didn't explicitly say that these people were going to join the Green Cloud sect of the North Island, any one of them who succeeded in building their foundation and joined the Archaic Alliance would undoubtedly be part of the Green Cloud sect of the North Island. After all, they had a relationship with Linny. Exanigia even guessed that they practiced the Green Cloud heart-calming spell. With all these factors, could they join other ancient sects? The most important part of the experience in the secular world was to recruit disciples. He was about to get a bunch of talented geniuses. For Exanigia, this was a great merit. In the future, his status and treatment in the Green Cloud sect in the North Island would be improved. Linny, the Grand Master who appeared out of nowhere, was his lucky star. Facing the arrival of Qintian's group, the one who was the most nervous was Colt. For some reason, She felt like an ugly daughter-in-law meeting her parents-in-law. After all, to Lin Yi's small circle, she was a complete outsider. But after Chen Tian and the others called her sis-in-law, Lung Lung's face flushed red. But deep down she was relieved. Since she'd decided to be with Lin Yi, she had to integrate well into this little circle. Otherwise, she'd still be an outsider. Boss, this place is good, but we don't have a house. We can't block the wind and rain. It'll be bad if the weather changes. Chen Tian rubbed his chin. Yes, so many of us are here. We've got nothing better to do anyway. Why don't we build a sea view house for fun? Xiaobo suggested. Yu Bing and the others all agreed as well. They were a bunch of sky-class peak masters after all. It would be hard for them to build a proper house. But if it was just a small wooden hut, it would be a piece of cake. All right, I'll leave it to you guys. Lin Yi nodded. It would be fine if they were alone, but Meng Yao and the others were here. They couldn't just let them be exposed to the sun and wind. As long as they built the house next to the eye, they would be able to absorb enough qi. Chen Tian and the others responded, and they immediately started working. One group went to get the materials, while the other stayed behind to build the foundation. As for Lingshan and the other women, they formed a circle around the blueprints, and even Cold was dragged into the discussion. It was a lively scene. Exanigia was dumbfounded by the scene. These people were not here to cultivate, they were here to have fun. You're actually building a house? Are you planning to stay here for a long time? Exanigia didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Can I? Lin Yi's eyes lit up. This place was full of qi and had a beautiful environment. It was isolated from the rest of the world. It was a blessed place. But once the ancient passage closes, it would be a great choice. In principle, there's nothing wrong with that. Although this place is blessed by the heavens, it doesn't belong to the Archaic Alliance, nor does it belong to the mortal world. In truth, it's an ownerless land. But once the ancient passage closes, we'll really be cut off from the rest of the world. Exanigia said. It was a boundless sea in all directions, and the only place where one could really move was limited to this small archipelago. The total area of the archipelago was only a few dozen square kilometers. The only good thing about it was that it was rich in spiritual qi. It could be used for occasional closed-door training and breakthroughs, but once the primordial passageway was closed and isolated from the rest of the world, living here would definitely drive one crazy. Then what are the conditions to open the ancient passage? Lin Yi asked. There are 2 conditions. First, you need a lot of spiritual jades. You need at least 300 pieces of spiritual jades to activate the primordial passage. Second, you need to pass through the natural inhibition between the primordial small Jianghu and the secular world. This inhibition has a strong and weak cycle. It will reach its lowest point every 1,000 years. Only then can you pass through safely. Although it's not completely impossible to pass through at other times, it's very dangerous. Exanigia answered honestly. Seal, I didn't feel any strong seal when I came in. Lin Yi asked curiously. You may not know this, but this seal needs to be replenished with qi. The qi in the common world is so thin that even if there was a seal, it would have collapsed long ago. However, it still exists in the small ancient world. The transmission formation of the ancient passage is within the scope of the seal. No matter how you go in or out, you'll be affected, Exanigia said. That means as long as we don't go to the small ancient world, the transmission formation here won't be affected. Lin Yi cheered up. This seems to be the case. But to activate the transmission formation here, we need a lot of spirit jades. Even if we don't need 300, we need at least 200. Moreover, it can only last for a period of time. After a year, we'll have to change it. Exanigia shook his head. Not to mention him, 200 spirit jades was not a small number for the entire Green Cloud sect in the North Island. Moreover, it was not permanent. It could only last for a year. Oh, that's not a problem. Lin Yi didn't care about the spirit jades at all. For him, any problem that could be solved with spirit jades was not a problem. Not to mention 200 spirit jades. If he could swipe the spirit jade card, 20,000 was just a drop in the ocean. Chapter 5101. But thinking about it carefully, since this Grand Master was an existence left behind from the primordial era. As long as he put in some effort, he would be able to accumulate a huge amount of wealth in such a long time. It wouldn't be strange even if it was the common world. If that's the case, this place is indeed worth managing. Lenny looked at Chintian and the others who were busy working behind him, then looked at the surroundings and nodded in satisfaction. According to what Xianijia said, after the primordial passage was closed, this place would basically be completely isolated from the primordial world. As long as he continuously activated the teleportation circle with Spirit Jade, he would be able to come and go freely between the common world and the common world. It was the best choice for a base camp. Not only would it be safe to place the unconscious girls here, they would also be nourished by the spirit chi. It was killing two birds with one stone. After making up his mind, the next thing Lin Yi needed to do was to carefully explore the surroundings of the archipelago. Although there didn't seem to be any danger on the surface, since he planned to manage this place as a base camp, he had to clearly investigate every possible threat in the surroundings beforehand. At least, he had to have an idea of what was going on. After greeting Lingshan and the others, Lin Yi started to row the boat around the archipelago. However, he wasn't alone. Lung Lung came along this time. How are you getting along with them? Lin Yi asked as he rowed the boat. Not bad. Lung Lung nodded. Her cold personality made it difficult for her to get along with others. Even if she took the initiative to integrate into Lin Yi's little circle, it wasn't that easy. After all, her background was from the primordial world. It was too different from the common world. It would be easier for her to get along with Hui Yudi and Huang Xiaotao on Sky-class Island. However, Lung Lung was just a cold personality, not the kind of disgusting pretentious aloofness. So Lingshan and the others were still very warm to her, even to the point that she felt a little flattered. Moreover, they were all straightforward girls who didn't have any schemes or subtlety. Even if they weren't as close as sisters, their relationship wouldn't be that bad after interacting with each other for a long time. They're all simple guys. They're easy to get along with. Lin Yi smiled. He could tell that Cold was a little reserved. In fact, as long as one did not have the temperament of being familiar with others, one would feel restrained in Lung Lung's position. However, one would slowly get used to it. Lung Lung hesitated for a moment before asking weakly, how many female confidants do you actually have? I really haven't counted them, except for the ones in the secular world. There are still more on the Heaven Stage Island. Lin Yi couldn't help sweating. Anyway, he couldn't count all of them with his fingers or even his toes. Even in the ancient world of cultivation, it was rare to see a winner in life who had as many female confidants as he did. Lung Lung was stunned for a moment. She had already seen more than 10 of them today. She didn't expect that this wasn't all of them. Lung Lung could not help but be dumbfounded. You're not bragging, are you? What's there to brag about? Lin Yi blushed. There are always men who brag like this. The more female confidants they have, the more powerful they are. This is a very normal thing in the ancient martial world. Lung Lung paused for a moment as she spoke. She then muttered with a strange expression. But even if they were to brag, they wouldn't be as many as you. You're really unprecedented. Lin Yi could not help sweating again. Although other men treated this as their capital to show off, he felt that he had lost a lot of experience. These were all love debts. Could he ever repay them in this lifetime? He initially thought that Lung Lung would be a little angry. Unexpectedly, the corner of the girl's mouth curled up and said, "But this is good too. At least it proves that I didn't find the wrong person. Otherwise, it's impossible for so many girls to be blind, right?" Lin Yi was immediately defeated by her strong logic. It was true that the probability of so many girls being blind was extremely small. But was she not jealous at all? "You're not angry?" Lin Yi asked cautiously. "Why would I be angry?" Lung Lung was surprised. It was natural for a strong man to be favored by a woman. It was a natural thing for a man like Lin Yi to have so many female confidants in the ancient martial world. Was there a need to be angry? Lin Yi was stumped by the question. He choked for a while and did not know what to say. He could only change the topic. "Oh right, are you going back to the ancient martial world after your training in the secular world?" No, the ancient trial will be right after the training in the secular world. I'll only return to the ancient martial world after the trial ends. Lung Lung shook her head. The ancient trial that you mentioned is not in the ancient martial world. Lenny asked curiously. It is and it isn't, Lung Lung said. What do you mean? There's a hidden meaning to this? Lenny was confused. Actually, I'm not too sure. In short, the only way to get to that place is through the teleportation circle. Other than that, there's no other way to get there. No one has ever been able to find out the location of that place. The ancient martial world is only connected to that place by a one-way teleportation circle. It seems that we can only teleport to the ancient martial world from that place. Lung Lung explained. One-way teleportation circle? If that's the case, there's no way to teleport to that place from the ancient martial world. Then how are you guys going to participate in the ancient trial? Lenny was even more confused now. In the past, the ancient trial was in other places. But this time, we've encountered a good opportunity that only comes once in 1,000 years. We can teleport there directly from this transfer point. After the trial ends, we can teleport back to the ancient martial world from there. This should be the arrangement of the ancient alliance, Lung Lung said. There's a teleportation circle here? Lenny was stunned. There were only 2 teleportation circles in this transfer point. One was connected to the secular world, and the other was connected to the ancient martial world. He didn't see a third teleportation circle before this. Could it be on another island? It seems so. I'm not too sure about the specifics. But there's one thing I'm sure of. There's no third teleportation circle on these islands. Lung Lung shook her head. That's strange, Lenny frowned. We don't have to worry about this. Anyway, Uncle Master Xian will definitely tell us when the time comes. Lung Lung was indifferent, but her eyes were filled with a rare excitement that she couldn't suppress. According to the Archaic Alliance, the Archaic Trials this time could be said to be a once-in-1,000 years opportunity. Any cultivator who had the slightest desire to improve would definitely be slightly excited when they encountered such an opportunity. Naturally, she was the same. Chapter 5102. The two talked as they circled around the archipelago. Lenny didn't sense any actual threat from the beginning to the end. From what he understood, the biggest threat in the vast ocean was the sea beasts. If this place had sea beasts like Sky-class Island, then he'd have to think twice about it. What surprised him, however, was that there weren't any traces of powerful sea beasts. There were all sorts of strange creatures in the sea, many of them carnivorous, but they weren't much of a threat to a practitioner. After a round of inspection, Ling Yi's decision was confirmed. This place was indeed suitable for a base. Lenny went back and called Lingshan and the others together. He told them about his plans, and they were all very excited. This wasn't just a base, it was also a vacation spot. Boss, if that's the case, then we can't just build a house casually. We need to design it properly. I know a few designer friends, I'll go ask them for the designs, Chintian said impatiently. Yeah, a sea view cabin won't suffice. Let's make a few sea view villas for everyone to live in. Lingshan and the others nodded. All right, I'm going out anyway. I'll go with you. Lenny nodded and teleported back to the common world with Chintian. Boss, what are you going to do? Chintian couldn't help but ask. I'm going to West Star Village to see the old man. Lenny smiled. He'd talked to Lin Dongfang on the phone before, but it was rare for him to come back to the common world. It wouldn't make sense if he didn't see him face to face. Plus, since they were going to build a base here, he had to ask the old man and Aunt Qing to come and take a look. Oh, so you're going to see Senior Lin, Chintian said respectfully. He'd only seen Lin Dongfang once when he Luonan and the Iron Cloak sect came to cause trouble, but that had left a deep impression on him. As a Sky-class full perfection, he still couldn't understand Lin Dongfang's strength. He only felt that he was mysterious as Lin Yi. Lin Yi couldn't help but laugh when he saw his expression. What was called distance-making beauty? This was a living example of distance-making beauty. If this fellow had spent more time with old man Lin, he would have known what kind of person he was. He definitely wouldn't have been filled with respect just by hearing his name. Oh right, do you know what Air Gooden has been doing lately? Lenny asked casually. Air Gooden? Shintian paused for a moment before realizing that the guy was talking about Zhou Jiaming. He scratched his head. It's been a while since we last talked. I think he said he was going out to do something. Then I couldn't find him. He doesn't use a cell phone, so it's not easy to find him. He's not in the West Star Village? Lenny paused. He thought that Gooden was still in Star West Village, since he needed to drink the spring water to suppress the poison. Even if he left Star West Village, it wouldn't be long. But he wasn't in Star West Village? I don't know. Shintian shook his head. Although Gooden was his boss, he didn't interact much with him. Other than calling him occasionally, they basically didn't talk at all. He didn't know what Gooden was doing. Nothing bad happened, right? Lenny frowned. But thinking about it, Old Man Lin was in Star West Village, and Gooden himself wasn't someone to be messed with. The possibility of something bad happening was very small. No matter what, he just needed to go to Star West Village, and he'd know everything. After leaving Shenangjia, Lenny and Shintian parted ways, and went straight to Star West Village. He came to the village entrance, and looked at the familiar village. He couldn't help but feel emotional. 3 years had passed in a flash, and he had changed a lot. The whole world of practitioners had changed a lot. But Star West Village didn't seem to have changed at all. It was still peaceful. Huh, aren't you that guy? Suddenly, a voice with a village accent came from the side. Lenny heard the voice and turned his head. It was Widow Wang from the grocery store at the entrance of the village. She was eating sunflower seeds at the window as she looked at him up and down. She thought for a long time before remembering the name. Old Lin's Lily, right? Didn't you go to the big city to work? You haven't been back for years, right? Auntie Wang, long time no see. How's the village these years? Lenny smiled and greeted. How can a small village like ours be? 100 years can't change much. But Lil you've changed a lot. TSK, look at your clothes, they're all famous brands, right? You're different after living in the big city. Not like the country bumpkins in our village. Widow Wang praised as she ate her sunflower seeds. Not at all, they're all cheap stuff, Lenny smiled. Hey, don't think that Auntie Wang hasn't seen the world. I can tell if it's a famous brand or not. Widow Wang said confidently and then asked. You're back to see your grandfather, right? Don't worry, he's fine. The village is a little chaotic these days, but your family doesn't raise chickens or ducks, so you can't afford any losses. What happened in the village? Lenny was stunned. Huh, you still don't know? Widow Wang was a little confused. She thought that Lenny heard that something happened in the village and rushed back to see old Lin. She didn't expect that Lenny didn't know anything. I don't know. Lenny shook his head blankly. Come. I don't have anything to do anyway, so Auntie Wang will tell you about it. Widow Wang suddenly became energetic. Usually, other than watching TV, she would point and talk to people to relieve her boredom. However, it was always the same old faces, and it was boring. It was rare that she had a new audience today, so she said mysteriously, You don't know, but it's not just our West Star Mountain village. Chapter 5103. Lily, don't doubt me. It's the truth. It doesn't sound reliable, but it's the truth. It's definitely not Auntie Wang's nonsense. If you don't believe me, you can ask someone else later. Widow Wang purposely lowered her voice and said in a horrified tone. This is really evil. Since about a month ago, chickens and ducks in our village have been disappearing for no reason. Basically, every household that has a pet has been affected. This is probably a case of a thief, right? What does this have to do with ghosts and monsters? Lenny shook his head disapprovingly. That's what everyone thought at first. Although everyone in our village knows each other well, there's no guarantee that we might have recruited some outsiders. But guess what happened? A few days later, someone found a pile of dead chickens and ducks in the mountains. When everyone went over to take a look, they found out that it was the chickens and ducks that had been lost in our village. Widow Wang said in shock. This is a little strange. Lenny frowned slightly. Normally, if it was just a case of a thief, these chickens and ducks would have been stolen and sold. But the dead chickens and ducks were thrown into the mountains. This didn't make sense. Could it be that someone was trying to take revenge, or was it just a prank? This isn't the scariest thing. The scariest thing is that all the dead chickens and ducks were there, but the blood inside was sucked dry. Widow Wang patted her chest in fear. Really? The blood was sucked dry? Lenny was shocked. How can it be fake? Many people in the village went there that day. Everyone saw it for themselves. It was a horrifying scene. No one dared to go there. Widow Wang said nervously. If you didn't go there, how do you know that the blood was sucked dry? Lenny couldn't help but ask. Gooden said it. He's the one who found out about it. He's big and brave, and he dares to go up and look at everything. Widow Wang said with a curl of her lips. I see. Lenny smiled. Normal people would be scared of something like this, but Gooden wasn't scared of anything. It was just some chickens and ducks. Even if it was really a ghost, it would probably be smashed silly by his fist. With his strength, he basically had no opponents in the secular world. Even Foundation establishment experts from the Archaic Alliance might not be able to take advantage of him. This is just the beginning. At first, it was just losing chickens and ducks, but recently, even the cows and sheep have disappeared. It was just a few days ago. And then Gooden's cows suddenly disappeared. Needless to say, it must have been taken away by that evil thing. Widow Wang said confidently. It's not good to jump to conclusions so quickly. Maybe someone is playing a prank or something. Lenny shook his head disapprovingly. Although these things sounded a little strange, it was too far-fetched to conclude that they were haunted just like that. A prank? How could this be a prank? If chickens, ducks, cows, and goats are pranks, then is killing people also a prank? Widow Wang scoffed. What? He even killed someone. Who is it? Lenny was shocked. If it was just livestock, it would be fine. But if someone died, it would be a big deal. Especially for normal people, it was a big deal. It's not from our village. I think it's from some hiking club. Anyway, it's just a few university students who came to our West Star Mountain to camp. And 2 of them died in one night. 2 days ago, the police came to ask about this, saying that the 2 people who died were also sucked dry of blood. They died in the same way as the chickens and ducks in our village. It's spreading like crazy. Widow Wang said as she shrunk her neck. It's this big. Lenny couldn't help but frown. He just thought that Auntie Wang and the others were superstitious and paranoid. But after hearing this, even he felt that something was wrong. Could it be that there really was something that sucked blood? Isn't that right? Now everyone is panicking, and no one dares to go out if there's nothing important. Look, even my business is a lot worse. Widow Wang grumbled for a while, and then exhorted. You should also hurry back. Although we only lost some livestock in our village, who knows if there will be any deaths? It's better to be careful. Okay, thanks Auntie Wang. I'll go back first. Lenny nodded and immediately walked back to his house. He heard Old Man Lin and Aunt Qing talking before he even entered the door. His lips curled up, and he stopped in his tracks. Are you really not going to help Little E? Since the Archaic Alliance is full of Heavenly Dao stage masters, even if Little E went to Heaven Island, they won't be easy to deal with. Aren't you worried at all? Aunt Qing said with a bit of worry and complaint. Don't worry about it. That kid's life is very tough. He won't die. Old Lin said in a nonchalant tone. What do you mean tough? Even if he's tough, you can't push him into the fire pit. What if something bad happens? Aunt Qing said unhappily. What do you know? I've raised this kid since he was young, and he even went to Heaven Stage Island to stay for 3 years. If he can't even handle this kind of situation, then wouldn't he be trash? How could the kid I personally raised be this kind of trash? Old Man Lin was still unconvinced. You call that training? You're clearly letting him grow, okay? Little E has a good foundation. With your training method, if it was someone else, they would have had to send their son off. How dare you show off? Aunt Qing didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Old Lin choked for a while, and then said, Anyway, don't worry about this. That kid isn't stupid. If he really can't handle it, he would have called for help. I don't think so. Xiao Yi usually looks amiable and easy to talk to, but in fact, he's as stubborn as you. He probably won't even consider asking you for help. And it'll be too late by the time he reaches that step. I think we'd better pack up quickly and go down the mountain. Aunt Qing continued to persuade them with good intentions. I already said, we really don't need to go. That kid can handle it himself. Don't worry too much. Old Lin curled his lips. You really don't want to go? I won't make the mapo tofu anymore. You can make it yourself. Aunt Ching immediately wanted to quit. Don't do that. This is the dish I love. How can you not make it? Isn't that a waste of your good cooking skills? Old Lin suddenly became anxious. Chapter 5104. Before Linny could laugh out loud, a shoe suddenly flew out from the yard and hit his head. At the same time, it was accompanied by Old Lin's scolding. Brat, have you heard enough? You've been on Heaven State Island for 3 years, and you've learned to crawl? Wrong. I didn't learn to crawl on Heaven State Island. I learned it from you. Linny immediately threw the shoe back and pushed the door open. Littly, you're back. It was almost noon, and Aunt Ching was busy in the kitchen. When she saw Linny, she immediately came out with a face full of surprise. Aunt Ching, you're really tired of taking care of such a terrible old man. Linny grinned. Who's a terrible old man? Old Lin glared angrily and said with a face full of indignation. Speak clearly, kid. When did I teach you to crawl over the wall? That. Widow Wang. Linny deliberately stopped mid-sentence. As expected, Aunt Ching was still enthusiastically pouring tea for Linny. As soon as he said this, the surrounding temperature suddenly dropped. Old Lin was so angry that he jumped up on the spot. Don't frame a good person, kid. When did I crawl over Widow Wang's wall? Linny, on the other hand, had a strange expression on his face. What's the rush? I didn't say you crawled over Widow Wang's wall. Aren't you just confessing? I just wanted to say something I heard from Widow Wang just now. Brat, you win. Old Lin rolled his eyes resentfully, and Aunt Ching covered her mouth and laughed. After asking Linny to sit down and drink tea, she continued to busy in the kitchen. This tea is not bad. Where did you get it? Linny took a sip and said in surprise. He had drunk a lot of high-quality spiritual tea on Heaven State Island, and it was often the best spiritual tea that couldn't be bought in the market. But this tea looked ordinary at first glance, but after drinking it, it left an endless aftertaste. Are you stupid? This is just wild tea randomly picked in the mountains. You didn't want it before. Old Lin curled his lips. Is that so? Then why do I have a deeper taste this time? Linny asked in surprise. This is called the way of tea, do you understand? You can't just look at the quality of the tea leaves when you drink tea. More importantly, you have to look at the person who brewed the tea. If you can taste the depth of the tea, it means that you have made some progress. Not bad. Old Man Lin nodded in satisfaction. Linny chuckled and asked, Aren't you going to ask about the Archaic Alliance? What's there to ask? Since you're here with a smile on your face, that means the matter with the Archaic Alliance has already been settled. Otherwise, why would you have the time to come back? Old Lin's expression seemed to say that Lin Yun was an idiot. Linny could only smile bitterly. The old man's analysis was very reasonable, but this expression really made people speechless. Have you heard about what happened in the village? Old Lin asked. Yes, I heard from Widow Wang. It sounds a little strange. Linny nodded. He couldn't be sure before he solved the mystery, but he was sure that it wasn't a ghost or a monster like Widow Wang said. There had to be something else going on. All right, since you just came back, I'll leave this to you. Old Lin pushed the boat along with the current. Ordering me around like this as soon as I came back? Is that really appropriate? Linny was speechless. Who else would I order around if not you? Old Lin rolled his eyes. Plus, Herr Gooden has already gone to investigate this. Are you going to let him do it alone? Linny was speechless. So this was what Herr Gooden was going to do. This guy was strong enough, but the problem was that he wasn't very smart. It was fine for him to find someone to fight, but investigating this kind of strange supernatural event was a bit difficult. Linny could only smile bitterly. You're going to let him go? Although the West Star Mountain is big, it's like the back garden of that kid's house. Plus, his brute strength is a headache for anyone who sees him. At most, he'll just suffer a little. It won't be that easy for him to die. What's there to worry about? Old Lin curled his lips. All right, you win. I'll go find him right now. Linny immediately got up to go to the West Star Mountain. To him, Herr Gooden wasn't only his childhood playmate, but also his closest and most trusted brother. Even if he knew that Gooden wouldn't be in any danger, he couldn't help but worry. Wait. Old Lin suddenly stopped him. After a pause, he said, "Leave after you finish eating. Your Aunt Ching's specialties are all good. You can't eat them outside. It's not that exaggerated. It's just home-cooked food." Aunt Ching smiled as she arranged the table and invited the two to eat. Linny took a bite, and his eyes lit up. He praised, "Delicious. With Aunt Ching here, this old man is so lucky. The word dish is the best. Haha, eat more if it's delicious." Aunt Ching smiled. "Don't mind me. Just a few bites is enough. Don't take my share." Old Lin didn't hesitate to take the whole plate of mapo tofu. Linny immediately wanted to take it. In the past, he couldn't take Old Lin's food. He thought that now that his strength had increased, it would be better. But in the end, he still lost. "Don't act like an adult." Aunt Ching scolded with a smile. She had been looking forward to this warm scene for a long time. It was rare for him to have a meal with Old Lin and Aunt Ching. Although it was just a simple meal, Linny was still filled with emotions. He felt warm and touched. But most of all, he was complaining. Old Lin's ability to snatch food was really fucking invincible. All right. Hurry up and get to work. You're such a big man, but you still have to lick the plate. Don't you feel ashamed?" Old Lin sent a message with a look of disdain. "I'm not full yet, and you're not letting me lick the plate?" Linny was indignant. Up until now, he had really only taken a few bites. After that, he hadn't been able to snatch any food at all. When he came back to his senses, the plate was already clean. "You're just a primordial spirit. How can you eat? It's a waste of food if you eat too much. Let's wait for dinner. I'm in a good mood. I'll let you have 2 bites." Old Lin was very magnanimous. "You said it yourself." Linny could only say this to Aunt Ching. He got up and walked out resentfully. West Star Mountain was very big. The mountain range was rugged, and the degree of development was very low. Other than a bumpy mountain road that connected a few small mountain villages in the mountain area, it was basically a primitive mountain forest like Shenangjia. Other than the local villagers and some foreign climbers, there was no one here all year round. Chapter 5105. But at this moment, a muscular figure was running in the forest. This speed was far beyond the limits of a normal human, but in the eyes of a practitioner, it wasn't that fast. This person was Lin Yi's childhood friend, Gooden Zhou Jieming. He'd been chasing after the cow ever since he lost it, and it was already the 3rd day. Other people would have given up already, but Gooden had no intention of giving up. He grew up in this mountain, and because of the goo poison, he couldn't easily leave the West Star Mountain village. To him, this huge West Star Mountain was his only small world, and it was common for him to spend the night in the forest. A few years ago, in order to chase a mountain leopard that ate his chickens and ducks, he persistently chased it for a whole 12 days. In the end, the mountain leopard died of exhaustion. Of course, this wasn't a simple leopard, but it didn't matter what it was, whether it was a ghost or a monster. As long as it stole something from his house, Gooden wouldn't let it go. Gooden only had one thought in his head, and that was to find the thing and smash it to pieces. "Huh? My cow." Gooden looked around and suddenly sprinted to the right. There was an old cow lying in the grass, still alive. Its eyes were wide open in despair as it twitched on the ground. It was unknown where a huge force came from, but the old cow was forced back down several times when it tried to get up. It could only continue to twitch on the ground. "Old Yellow, what are you doing? Can't get up from the ground?" Gooden mumbled, looking at the begging eyes of the cow. He walked up and tried to pull the cow up from the ground, but before he could do so, another huge force came from the cow, and it fell back down with a loud thud. Even Gooden staggered. "Hey-ya, an idiot came." There was a man lying on a tree branch a dozen meters above them. This man's aura was very similar to Sun Baimei of the Ancient Alliance's Baixia sect. The only difference was that his beard was snow white. He was Sun Baimei's blood brother, and also the Baixia sect's de Shixiang, who led the Baixia sect's team to the mortal world. The Baixia sect had always been eccentric, and their relationship with the other primordial sects was mediocre. Not many people came to the mortal world to train this time, so no one would pay attention to them. In fact, even Exionegia, the leader of the group, had subconsciously forgotten about them. Ever since Lenny showed up, almost all the disciples from the primordial sects had been summoned back to the mortal world. Only the people from the Baisia sect were still outside. It wasn't that they disobeyed orders on purpose, but no one informed them. Sun Baimei, the leader of the group, didn't stay in Shenangjia like the other leaders of the primordial sections. They couldn't find a single Baisia sect disciple, even if they turned the entire mountain upside down. Even if Exionegia did remember that there was a sect like this, he wouldn't have been able to inform them. Sun Baimei laid on the branch, watching this scene casually. His face was like a cat playing with a mouse. Gooden looked as strong as a bull, strong enough to intimidate most normal people, but in his eyes, he was just an ant. If he wanted Gooden dead, he could do it with just a thought. In his eyes, Gooden was already a dead man the moment he followed him. But Sun Baishu didn't plan on killing Gooden that quickly. He'd been here for more than a month, and although his plan was progressing smoothly, it was still a bit boring. Now was the perfect time to use this idiot to relieve his boredom. Go ahead, before my baby finishes eating. You won't be able to pull it up even if you tire yourself to death. Sun Baishu had a teasing smile on his face. Without the strength of over 10,000 kilograms, wanting to lift this old cow up from the ground was simply a fool's dream. Let alone ordinary people. Even experts at the peak of the Foundation establishment realm like him could not do such a thing. But in the next moment, Gooden spat on his hand and used all his strength to forcefully lift the old bull up from the ground. What's going on? Sun Baimei's eyes were popping out, and he almost fell from the tree. He barely managed to hold on to the branch. He stared at Gooden, who was lifting the old bull up high in shock. Where did this monster come from? What's going on? Gooden, on the other hand, was shocked as well. After he lifted the cow up, he realized that there was a blood hole the size of a wooden bucket on the ground. There was a huge and ugly red bug in there, sucking the innards of the cow. More accurately, it was sucking the blood. This bug was huge, more than 2 meters in front of Gooden, and this was only a small part of it. Its main body was still in the ground. This was a giant bug. The old bull was struggling in the air, and the bug was still sucking its blood like crazy. In the blink of an eye, the bull's organs and body were all gone. The bug pulled its head out of the body, and it had no facial features, no antennae, only a huge bloody mouth. Gooden stared at it for a while, and Sun Baimei thought he was stunned. So ugly. Plop. Sun Baishu fell from the tree on the spot, but before he hit the ground, he was caught by the blood-red giant worm. Standing on the giant worm's head, it said, "Kid, do you know what legendary creature you're looking at? How dare you say it's ugly?" There's another person? Gooden paused. Such slow reflexes. I thought it was some master, but it's just a dumb kid. Sun Baimei shook his head in disdain at Gooden's surprised expression. What happened just now really gave him a fright. He didn't think that Gooden would be able to lift up the old cow so easily. This strength was too shocking. He thought that he had met some master, but now it seemed that he was just an idiot kid with dumb strength. He wasn't worth mentioning at all. Chapter 5106. Do you even need to ask? Baishu looked at Gooden, as if he was an idiot. Not only this cow, but the chickens and ducks in the nearby villages, the leopards and wild boars in the mountains, they're all food for my baby. Oh right, there were a few unlucky bastards who came here last time. Actually, my baby likes to drink human blood the most, but I don't want to cause too much of a ruckus before it's fully grown. That's why I didn't do anything to you guys. Did you raise this long worm? Gooden's attention was still on the blood-red worm. Half of its body had already come out of the ground, and it was 7 to 8 meters tall when it stood up. It was at least 10 meters long. Long worm? Ignorant fool. These are blood corpses that have existed since the ancient times. However, these things are too ferocious and terrifying. When they were at their craziest, they once caused chaos in the world. Therefore, since the ancient times, they have been listed as forbidden beasts that must be eradicated. If they see one, they will be killed. No one is allowed to raise them. Unfortunately, Our evil warding sect's ancestor secretly froze a few larvae. These larvae are only the size of a finger, and no one can find them. Sun Baishu said proudly. Talking to an idiot like this was very stupid no matter how you looked at it. But it wasn't hard to understand. It was like carving a perfect piece of art, and anyone would want to show it off to someone. Unfortunately, he couldn't see the light of day yet, so he could only find some satisfaction in talking to Gooden. After all, Gooden was a dead man in his eyes, so he could talk to a dead man. Gooden didn't understand. He didn't even know what the Archaic Alliance was, and he had no idea what the evil warding sect was. What Baishi was telling him was like playing the lute to a cow. However, even if he was playing the lute to a cow, Sun Baishu still played it with relish. If I want to raise the blood corpse worms, I need to constantly absorb the blood essence of various creatures. This kind of thing can't be done in the small pugilistic world of the primordial era. Once someone finds out, they will die without a burial place. Therefore, I have been waiting for an opportunity. As long as I have half a year, I will be able to nurture this blood corpse worm into a true behemoth. At that time, even if the ancient alliance is alarmed, it doesn't matter. Even if the gold core stage experts come, they will only be sending themselves to death. From then on, I will be the only one in the world. Gooden finally understood a little. He looked at Baishu. Is there something wrong with you? What did you say? Sun Baishu was immersed in a wonderful fantasy, and was unable to extricate himself. When he suddenly heard these words, he was so angry that his nose became crooked. Such a perfect plan was actually said to be sick by someone. Moreover, it was by such a silly kid. This was intolerable. I say, are you sick? Do you think you're invincible just because you have this ugly worm? Did a donkey kick your head? Gooden's expression was very serious. He truly thought that this Sun Baishu was a crazy person, a very sick one at that. You're asking to die. Sun Baishu raged. He wanted to let this dumb kid live a little longer. Even if he didn't understand his grand plan completely, he wanted to at least make him feel that it was amazing. He didn't expect Gooden to be this stubborn. He pointed at Gooden and ordered the blood corpse worm. Eat him. Strictly speaking, the blood corpse worm wasn't a standard spirit beast. It didn't rely on spiritual chi to nourish itself, and it didn't have the intelligence of a spirit beast. However, once it matured, it had the power to destroy the world. If one had to give an accurate definition, it would be a savage beast. But even if it didn't look like it had any intelligence, it could still understand some simple orders. For example, this 10-meter-long worm roared and pounced at Gooden after hearing Sun Baishu's order. Its featureless face showed a strange excitement. It liked the blood of all living things, especially human blood. Gooden quickly moved 2 steps away, barely dodging the worm's first attack. The stinky body of the blood corpse worm brushed past his face, and after missing the first attack, it drilled into the ground. This thing's burrowing skills were truly top-notch. Disgusting. Gooden wiped the mucus off his face. Even someone with a high tolerance like him couldn't help but want to puke. This bug was the most disgusting bug he'd ever seen in his life, bar none. You won't feel disgusted when you're dead. Sun Baishu stood to the side with his arms crossed and sneered. He had no intention of making a move himself. For an expert at the peak of the Foundation establishment realm like him, dealing with an ordinary person who only had brute force was really degrading. Even though the blood corpse was far from growing to the legendary level of invincibility, it was more than enough to deal with such an ordinary person. Gooden ignored him and focused on observing the ground. This blood corpse worm was a huge threat to him. Even if he drank the complete version of the Titan goo, he wasn't a true practitioner. His attack was strong, but his weak defense was a fatal shortcoming. If he wasn't careful and got hit by the blood corpse worm, then everything would be over. Unfortunately, this place was full of bushes, and the blood corpse worm couldn't find a trace of it. If it was Lin Yi, he could use his spirit sense to locate it. But Gooden didn't have any spirit sense. Sun Baishu looked at Gooden's careful look and laughed. He said with interest, I'm bored anyway. How about this? I can remind you that the blood corpse worm will definitely come out from under your feet. But I can't tell when exactly. You can bet on your luck. Maybe you'll be able to dodge it. Really? Gooden looked at him seriously, and then laid down on the ground, rubbing his palms. He didn't look like he was going to escape at all. He was ready to fight to the death with the blood corpse worm. Chapter 5107. Ere Gooden ignored him. He could tell that Sun Baishi was strong, but since he didn't attack him, he didn't think much of him. The only thing he had to deal with was the blood corpse worms. Ere Gooden's thoughts were just that simple. Sun Baishi crossed his arms and watched from afar. In his eyes, Gooden was already a dead man. Even though the blood corpse wasn't fully grown yet, it wasn't something a normal person could handle. Especially with Gooden's stupid way of dealing with it. Sun Baishi knew that even he wouldn't be able to escape unscathed. After all, the 10-meter-long blood corpse wasn't something to be messed with. After a moment of stalemate, the ground beneath Gooden's feet moved slightly, and the worm roared as it shot into the sky. Its speed and strength were frightening. Just the wind that it created was too much for them to handle, let alone fight it head-on. An idiot is an idiot. He deserves to be eaten. Sun Baishi smiled coldly. Gooden was no longer on the ground, evidently swallowed by the blood corpse. Although the blood corpse only liked to drink blood, it didn't mind swallowing people after growing to this extent. This was one of its best attacks. But in the next moment, Sun Baishi paused. There was a person on top of the blood corpse's head. It was Gooden, who was in a fishing position. He didn't die. What kind of luck is this? Sun Baishi was shocked. He thought that Gooden was swallowed by the blood corpse, but even so, he didn't think much of him. The only reason he didn't get swallowed was that the idiot was lucky. Nothing else mattered. He would be thrown down by the blood corpse later, and he would still end up like this. The blood corpse went berserk, and Gooden stayed on top of its head, not letting go no matter what. One man and one bug danced in the air. Sun Baishi looked up with a smile on his face. 5 minutes passed, and the man and the bug were still running around. The smile on Sun Baishi's face finally disappeared. This didn't seem right. The blood corpse's speed was starting to slow down, but Gooden was still stuck to it like glue, not getting off. Instead, he looked like he was full of energy. After a while, the blood corpse's roar changed. The violent roar suddenly turned into a pitiful wail. Sun Baishi didn't dare watch anymore. He wanted to grab Gooden himself, but before he could do anything, blood rained down from the sky. Feeling the familiar stench, Sun Baishi froze. Gooden had already landed on the ground, and the 10-meter-long blood corpse was at his feet. What shocked Sun Baishi was that the blood corpse was ripped apart from its mouth, and the gap was more than a meter long. Wah! Sun Baishi exploded. No matter how strong the blood corpse was, its head was ripped in half. How was it supposed to live? This was the treasure he relied on the most. Whether or not he could be invincible in the future depended on this blood corpse that he had brought out, by every means possible. Who would have thought that it would be destroyed in the hands of such a fool? Where did this fool get such great strength to be able to tear the blood corpse in half out of thin air? Disgusting! Disgusting! Gooden didn't notice it at all. His hands were covered in the blood and mucus of the blood corpse. That nightmarish feeling made his scalp go numb. Even a man like Gooden couldn't handle it. How dare you kill my blood corpse? Sun Baishi looked at the motionless blood corpse on the ground. His eyes were about to pop out of their sockets. His head was dizzy. This was the treasure he put all his hope and effort into, and it was gone just like that. Of course I have to kill such a disgusting bug. It ate so many chickens and ducks in the village, and it stole my family's cow. How could I let it live? Gooden didn't know that this thing had already killed a few people. He suddenly raised his hand at Sun Baishi. Pay up. What? Sun Baishi was still stunned. He looked at Gooden, not knowing what he was doing. This is your bug. It ate so many things, shouldn't you pay up? Do you think I'm easy to bully? Gooden frowned. At the same time, he was seriously calculating the amount in his mind. The village had lost so many chickens and ducks, and his family had lost an old cow as well. He couldn't afford to lose too little money, but he couldn't calculate the exact amount right now. Maybe he should just grab this guy and go from house to house and ask him to pay the compensation? Ha! Ha 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 ha! Sun Baishi suddenly started laughing crazily. Just when Gooden was wondering if he was crazy, Sun Baishu grabbed at him with a ferocious face. I, Sun Baishu, had my plan ruined by an idiot. I'm the idiot. Gooden didn't have time to defend, and he was grabbed by the neck. He didn't have any defensive skills, and he didn't have extraordinary defense. He was in a life and death situation now. You deserve to die. You should have died a long time ago. My stupid idea caused such a huge mistake. You can die now. Baishu grabbed Gooden with both hands like a madman. He didn't even need to think about what kind of martial arts he was going to use. He didn't need any martial arts to deal with an idiot. He just wanted to strangle this idiot for ruining his plan. Gooden suddenly punched out, hitting Sun Baishu squarely in the chest. Bam! Sun Baishu was instantly sent flying by the hammer, leaving behind a glaring arc of blood in the air. He smashed through 3 large trees before finally falling to the ground. After a long time, he staggered to his feet. You. Who are you? Sun Baishu showed fear on his face for the first time. Gooden had only shown one true strength up until now, and that was pure strength. This wasn't something to be afraid of, but when his strength reached the point where he could tear the blood corpse apart with his bare hands, and he could even send a foundation building peak like him flying with one punch, he had to look at him differently. Chapter 5108. You're asking for my name? I'm Heir Gooden. Gooden scratched his head with an honest face. As for the name Zhou Jiaming, he didn't really tell people about it. People who knew him just called him Heir Gooden. Heir Gooden? Is that a person's name? Sun Baishu was already coughing up blood, and now he was coughing up even more violently. He thought that he'd met the disciple of some hidden master. The qi in the common world was extremely weak, but it didn't exclude the possibility of powerful beings existing. But what kind of powerful being would give his disciple such a stupid name? Heir Gooden. How is it not a person's name? Are you cursing me, you coward? I'll beat you to death. Gooden was furious. He charged forward, wanting to punch again. He didn't use his full strength in that punch, but even so, it was enough to make Baishu spit out blood. If he charged up for another punch, Baishu, who was a complete foundation establishment practitioner, would probably be beaten to death. Coward? Calling me a coward? Sun Baishu was furious as well. It was only because of the sudden turn of events that he became cautious. If he didn't find out who Gooden was, he wouldn't be able to rest easy even if he killed him today. Who knew what kind of powerful being was behind this brute? But at this point he couldn't back off anymore. This idiot killed his blood corpse bugs, beat him up until he coughed up blood, and now he was coming at him even more fiercely. This guy didn't know what death was, did he? Did he really think that he, a complete foundation establishment practitioner, was easy to bully? Sun Baishu grunted coldly as he shook his sleeves, causing 2 pitch-black short blades to suddenly appear. They swished and spun rapidly in his hands, and when looked at from afar, they were like 2 balls of blurry pitch-black blade images that revealed an extremely dangerous aura. Gooden didn't care about that, however. He picked up the tree that Sun Baishu broke earlier and swung it at him. He might seem like an honest guy, but he wasn't an idiot. He knew that he didn't have any techniques to speak of, and there was a prerequisite to using brute strength to take down 10 skills. They had to be at least 1 level apart. This person in front of him didn't look like someone easy to deal with, and he'd be at a disadvantage if he got close. He might as well just use the tree. Idiot! Baishu smiled coldly, not bothering to face the tree head-on. Instead, he moved behind the tree, avoiding Gooden's line of sight. With a few steps, he was right in front of Gooden, ready to slash his throat with 2 slashes. Just as he was about to succeed, Sun Baishu's knees suddenly sank without any warning, and he unexpectedly knelt down. What? Gooden paused, pushing aside the tree with one hand and punching with the other. Bam! Sun Baishu flew out again, spitting out another mouthful of blood. How could this be? As Sun Baishu vomited blood, he looked at his knees in disbelief. Why did they suddenly sink just now? It felt like they were hit by a wave of true energy. This fool actually had such an undetectable method. It didn't seem like it. Could it be that this guy wasn't a fool, but an expert in disguise? Gooden didn't care about that. He was an honest guy, but he knew how to take advantage of someone's weakness to kill them. Seeing that Baishi wasn't dead after that punch, he roared and chased after them with the tree in his hands. Fuck, I don't believe it. Whitebeard didn't believe in heresy, so he stood up to meet him. Although he was extremely fearful of being hit in the knee, he was still an expert at the great circle of the Foundation establishment realm. He wouldn't be so easily scared that he would flee. Most importantly, he didn't believe that he couldn't even defeat a fool. He didn't believe in heresy. A pair of black daggers spun around in his hands, instantly cutting the tree into pieces. He'd purposely used the tree as cover to block Gooden's line of sight, but at the same time, he'd also blocked his own line of sight. He didn't know when Gooden had used that chi, but this time he was smarter. With his strength, he didn't need to be sneaky at all against an idiot who only knew how to use brute force. He could just take it head on. There was nothing between them that could block their line of sight. No matter what the opponent did, he would be able to see it clearly. Everything was going according to Sun Baishi's plan. The tree in Gooden's hands couldn't even take a single hit from his dagger, and the tree was cleared in an instant. The distance between the two was less than 3 steps, and there wasn't anything between them. Gooden didn't panic at all. Since the tree couldn't be used anymore, he might as well fight with his fists. After all, this was what he was best at. Sun Baishi was a bit stunned as he looked at this simple punch. The punch looked powerful and unstoppable, but he couldn't feel any chi ripples from it. There weren't any tricks either. It was just a simple punch. That simple? Sun Baishi didn't quite believe it, and didn't respond for a long time. It wasn't until the last moment that he came to his senses. The corners of his mouth curled into a sinister smile. Since that's the case, you can die in peace. He wasn't an idiot. Even an idiot could tell that Gooden's punch was powerful, especially after taking 2 punches in a row. Even someone like Sun Baishu, a complete Foundation establishment practitioner, didn't dare let his guard down. He might not be able to gain any advantage if he fought head-on, but who said that you had to fight head-on to kill someone? At the last moment when Gooden's punch exploded, Sun Baishu's body flashed, and he appeared behind Gooden like a ghost. This was his signature movement technique, follow the shadow. At the same time, the 2 daggers in his hands moved to the back of Gooden's neck, ready to take his head off easily. Sun Baishu had done this too many times, and his movements were smooth and flawless. In terms of strength, he wasn't much weaker than Xue Jianfeng, the #1 Foundation practitioner in the Archaic Alliance. Unexpectedly at this moment, a strange change occurred. Just like how his knees had suddenly sunk, this time it was his arms instead. The 2 pitch-black daggers deviated from their trajectory at the last moment. Sun Baishi was instantly horrified. What the fuck was going on? Chapter 5109. You. Who the hell are you? Baishi struggled to get up from the ground, one hand covering his mouth that was leaking air, as he looked around warily. He'd taken 2 punches and 1 elbow from Gooden, and even a Foundation-building perfected master like him couldn't take it. He was already heavily injured, but compared to his injuries, what scared him more was the 2 sudden chi attacks. There were only 2 possibilities. Either Gooden was a master pretending to be weak, or it was someone else. I told you my name's Gooden. You're not only crazy, you're also an idiot, aren't you? Gooden frowned. Baishi spat out another mouthful of blood. He was a Foundation completion master, and he was treated like an idiot by an idiot. Was there anything more painful than this? But this time, Baishi didn't dare continue to fight with Gooden. If he did, he'd be beaten to death. After looking around carefully, Baishi suddenly retreated without any warning. A grand perfected Foundation establishment expert had actually been scared away by a foolish brat from the secular world. This kind of thing was simply too shameful. Fortunately, this was a desolate mountain with no people. Sun Baishu secretly comforted himself in his heart. Where there's life, there's hope. As long as he went back to recuperate from his injuries and plan again, he would be able to take revenge sooner or later. He ran. Gooden scratched his head, confused. He thought that this guy was crazy. Not only did he keep such a disgusting bug, but he kept pausing in the middle of a fight. Did he escape from some mental hospital? But Gooden wouldn't let him get away just like that. He chased after him, not because he wanted to kill him, but because he hadn't paid the money yet. But other than his monstrous strength, Gooden didn't have anything else he could use. He didn't have any movement techniques, so he could only run a little faster than a normal person. Trying to catch up to a complete foundation establishment practitioner like this was too much, even with Sun Baishu's heavy injuries. Fortunately, this idiot's speed is so slow that it makes one's hair stand on end. Otherwise, we would have suffered a double loss today. Sun Baishu looked back as he ran with all his might, and he couldn't help but heave a sigh of relief. However, he immediately frowned. From the looks of it, the possibility of this fool pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger was extremely small. Did that mean that someone was secretly ambushing him? Who could it be? To be able to hide from his senses without him noticing. This person wasn't weak. Only the Archaic Alliance had a master like this. Could it be a senior brother from some ancient sect? The Baixia sect had a lot of enemies, and so did Sun Baimei. Sun Baimei couldn't think of anyone who would ambush him. He had never wanted to expose his whereabouts and plans to anyone, except for his blood brother, Sun Baimei. Could it be Baimei? Baishu froze. He didn't know that his brother was already dead. He gritted his teeth as he ran. If that was the case, he wouldn't let his brother go. Seeing that he had left Gooden far behind, Baishu finally slowed down. But before he could catch his breath, a calm voice came from in front of him. You want to rest after such a short distance? That's not good, is it? Baishu's face paled as he turned to the voice. There was a young man leaning against a tree, a faint smile on his face. It was Lenny. Who are you? Sun Baishu would be an idiot if he still couldn't react at this moment. At this moment, even if he used his toes to think, he could figure out that this person in front of him was the one who launched the sneak attack on him. They're his brother. Lenny pointed at Gooden, who was chasing them. Gooden paused when he saw Lenny. He rushed up and hugged Lenny in joy. Boss, when did you come back? Why didn't you tell me? I just came back to the village. I had a meal with the old man, and came looking for you. You sure ran far, making it so hard for me to find you, Lenny complained. Lenny complained with a half-serious smile. It was true that he ran far, but it wasn't that hard to find. After all, the blood corpse had made quite a commotion, and he had sensed it from afar. That was why he chased all the way here. I don't usually come here. I'm here to chase after this crazy person. You don't know, boss, but this crazy person has a disgusting bug that steals chickens and ducks. He even ate my old cow, and he doesn't want to pay up. Do you think I'll let him go? Gooden said angrily. Baishu wanted to cry, but there were no tears. He could endure being called a psycho. But what made him want to die was that Gooden was chasing him so hard, just to make him pay. Why the fuck didn't you say so earlier? Then I can't let him go. He's a sinner. I'll leave him to you, Gooden, Lenny smiled. All right. Wait a bit, I'll be done soon. Gooden replied and pounced at Sun Baishu energetically. Sun Baishu looked at Lenny with fear. He saw that Lenny really didn't want to do anything, so he quickly turned and ran. He didn't know who Lenny was, and Gooden wasn't someone he wanted to mess with. It was better to run. The two sneak attacks just now had taught him a lesson. Sun Baishu quickly turned around and carefully used his chi to protect his body. This way, even if the opponent attacked him with chi, he would be able to block it. He didn't think that the chi wouldn't come, but a blue lightning bolt instead. His body went numb all of a sudden, and even though he used his willpower to keep himself from falling, he still stumbled a little. Gooden, who caught up to him, punched him in the back without hesitation, sending him flying away with a grunt. He fell into a 10-meter deep ravine, never to get up again. Lenny used his mind to check, and made sure that the guy was dead. He nodded and patted Gooden's shoulder. All right, this guy's dead. I'll get someone to clean up the place. Let's go back. Chapter 51:10. Oh, okay. Gooden had always listened to Lenny. Whatever Lenny told him to do, he'd do it. He'd been like this since he was young. The two walked back to the village with their arms around each other's shoulders. Lenny asked curiously, Gooden, I noticed that you've gotten stronger recently. You're much better than before. Who did you learn from? This wasn't a false. Gooden was never a proper practitioner, but from the way he fought with Sun Baishu, he could tell that he didn't just rely on brute strength. Every punch he made had some sort of finesse to it, and what was rare was that he didn't stick to one move or one style. He just used his heart. More accurately speaking, Gooden wasn't using his fist skills, but his fist went, a fist will that could defeat 10 people with pure strength. Your grandpa. Gooden scratched his head and smiled. Really? The old man has that much free time? Lenny blinked. From what he remembered, old Lin rarely taught people proactively, especially someone like Gooden, who didn't look like a good disciple at all. Old Lin wouldn't do something like playing the lute to a cow. On a deeper level, to Gooden, being able to live a peaceful life in the mountains was already a blessing. Old Lin didn't want to change his life path. Being ordinary was a blessing. He didn't want to teach me, but I don't know why my strength has been getting stronger and stronger these years. It's like I can't control it, and I always break things. Your grandpa couldn't take it anymore, and so he taught me a way to control my strength. Gooden laughed. What way? Lenny couldn't help but be curious. Punching, 1,000 punches a day, Gooden said. What kind of stupid method is that? There's no technique at all. Isn't this old man too lazy? Lenny was speechless. If he didn't want to teach him, then he should teach him properly. Old Lin was just tiring the kid out. But it's very useful. At first he made me hit the rock every day with all my strength, but I kept accidentally breaking the rock. It took me a whole year to barely do it, Gooden explained. What happens after that? Lenny nodded. It sounded a bit more interesting. After that, I changed to hitting trees, and I still asked for a bit of damage. That way I hit trees for another year, Gooden said honestly. And then? Lenny continued to ask with great interest. After that, it's like fetching water. I can't use all my strength to make any splashes, and I can't make any ripples either. I can't do that even now, Gooden scratched his head. Lenny was shocked. He patted Gooden's shoulder, stunned. If you could do that, you'd be an unparalleled fist master. I just realized that you're actually a genius. Old Lin's method seemed perfunctory, but it was actually very meaningful. From hitting rocks to hitting trees to fetching water, every change meant that Gooden's control and understanding of strength increased. Not making any splashes or ripples was something even Lin couldn't do right now. If Gooden could do that, then it meant that his control of fist strength had reached an unprecedented level. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that he was a fist master. Ever since he was young, Lenny never thought that Gooden's talent was that high. Whether it was comprehension or potential, Gooden was below average even amongst normal people. He didn't think that he'd have this kind of effect when he trained in the fist art. It was truly impressive. But come to think of it, old Lin's method would only work on someone as innocent as Gooden. If it were Lin, putting aside the question of whether he'd be able to practice 1,000 punches a day, just the random thoughts in his mind would make it hard for him to focus and control his punching strength. Lenny had a high comprehension, but he really couldn't do it with Gooden's stupid method. After all, it wasn't using his brain, but his body to feel and control everything. Being too smart wasn't a good thing at this time, but a bad thing. I'm not a genius, I'm stupid. Your grandpa said that he could do it in 3 months, but I've been training for 3 to 4 years, and I still can't do it, Gooden said with a face full of shame. Listen to his bragging. Lenny didn't believe him at all. From his perspective, it was already amazing that Gooden could do this, and old Lin could do it in 3 months? He must have drunk too much. Right, Lenny bro, why did you come back this time? Didn't you say you went to Sky Class Island? Is it fun? Is it overseas? Gooden asked impatiently. Don't rush, I'll tell you slowly. Sky Class Island isn't overseas. It's a practitioner's plane that's isolated from our world. The practitioners there are all very strong. Lenny patiently told Gooden everything from the beginning, telling him everything no matter if it was a secret or not. Lenny never hid anything from this childhood friend of his. The two walked back to Star West Village, and Lenny didn't even finish talking about the northern island. He regretted it immediately. Wasn't he a bit too detailed? How long would it take for him to finish everything? But thinking about it, Now that the Archaic Alliance's business was done, Lenny didn't have anything urgent to do. He was planning to stay in Star West Village for a few more days. Since he had nothing better to do anyway, he might as well tell Gooden the story. For the next 3 days, Lenny stayed with Gooden. Of course, he ate with old Lin and Aunt Ching. Lenny tried all sorts of methods, but he couldn't gain any advantage over old Lin. He couldn't help but sigh. The old man's skill at stealing food was really off the charts. The only thing he got out of it was that after 3 days, Lenny finally told him about Sky-Class Island. Even then, Gooden still wanted more, as if he wanted to give up his life to accompany him. He always wanted to go to the outside world, but because of the goo poison, he couldn't leave Star West Village too far. Sky-Class Island was just a dream. Chapter 51:11. Your cooking isn't bad. Gooden must have done a lot in his past life to be able to get such a virtuous wife like you. Lenny couldn't stop praising Yuan, who was at the side. She was the one who prepared this meal. Not at all. Aunt Ching's cooking is much better than mine. I learned a lot from her. I'm satisfied if I can cook half as well. Yuan smiled and looked at Gooden. Yuan smiled as she looked at Gooden. Her life now was to stay at home and do some chores. And occasionally she'd go out to the fields with Gooden. She'd seen the outside world, but she preferred this kind of simple life. Otherwise, she wouldn't have gotten together with Gooden in the first place. Aunt Ching's cooking is good, but unfortunately, I don't have the luck to eat it. Lenny shook his head and sighed. What? Haven't you been eating Aunt Ching's cooking these few days? Yuan asked curiously. Lenny bro can't compete with his grandpa, Gooden explained as he wolfed down the food. Our family's misfortune. Sorry for the embarrassment. Lenny felt that old Lin didn't have any respect for his elders. He was already so old, and yet he was still able to snatch food from a young person like him so easily. Pfft. Yuan immediately covered her mouth and laughed. In order to find Aunt Ching to learn how to cook, she often went to the Lin family. Old man Lin had always been very serious in front of juniors like them. She didn't expect him to have such an old urchin side. Forget it. Let's not talk about these sad things. Right, Gooden, is the effect of the goo poison on you much weaker now? Lenny asked. No. Gooden shook his head. Then you stayed in the West Star Mountain for 3 days. You could still be so lively when fighting against a master like Sun Baishu. If it was before, you would have been so tired that you needed to drink some spring water, right? Lenny asked curiously. Because I didn't use my full strength, Gooden said shockingly. What? You didn't use your full strength when you beat up Sun Baishu? You didn't use your full strength against the blood corpses? Lenny was taken aback. He was already shocked when he saw Gooden's strength, and now that he was still alive and kicking after the fight, he subconsciously thought that the poison's effect on him had weakened. He didn't think that this wasn't Gooden's true strength. The blood corpse bug was already a powerful monster, and Sun Baishu was a foundation-building perfected master. Even if Lin Yi helped a little in the dark, the most important thing was still Gooden's own strength. If this wasn't his full strength, then what would it be like if he went all out? No, I'm still holding back more than half of my strength. Otherwise, if I use my full strength, my body will become as weak as if I'm sick. I must quickly drink the spirit spring water to alleviate the pain. That feeling is too uncomfortable, Gooden said with lingering fear. This kind of situation happened a lot when he first started training, and it had left a shadow in his heart. No matter what, he would subconsciously hold back his strength to prevent the same thing from happening again. So if you really used your full strength, both Sun Baishu and the blood corpse bug would die in one punch. Hey, you really are a monster, Lenny sighed. I'm not that strong. Gooden scratched his head honestly. Lenny was speechless. Indeed, from the perspective of Sky-Class Island, a foundation-building perfected master wasn't strong at all. But this was the common world. If Gooden's words got out, people would spit blood in anger. Gooden didn't have any concept of this. In his eyes, whether it was Lin Dongfang or Lin Yi, they were all many times stronger than him. He didn't think that killing Sun Baishu in one punch was something amazing. At the end of the day, it was because he hadn't seen the outside world. Otherwise, he wouldn't be so confident. Right, I thought of something that might be able to store spirit spring water. That way, you can go out and play more often. Lin Yi's eyes lit up. Gooden wanted to go out and see the outside world. As his big brother, of course, he couldn't forget about this. What is it? Gooden was happy. The Wanyankin box. Anything that's placed in it will retain its medicinal properties. Maybe spirit spring water will work too. Let's go, let's try it out, Lin Yi said excitedly. Whether it was old Lin or Gooden, spirit spring water was something they couldn't live without. Old Lin was fine. Going out for a while wasn't a problem, but Gooden couldn't. Like he said, once he used his full strength, he would become weak and powerless. He couldn't live without spirit spring water, and spirit spring water was very special. No matter what you put it in, it would lose its effect. It was almost impossible to bring it out. However, they could try the Wanyankin box. At this point, the two couldn't care less about eating. They ran out excitedly to try it out. They just used the Wanyankin box to store a bit of spirit spring water, and the two were dumbfounded. The box was leaking. The Wanyankin box could perfectly store the medicinal properties of all kinds of herbs, so even if it looked like a normal box, Lin Yi thought that it was a completely sealed box. Otherwise, how could the medicinal properties be preserved? Who would have thought that it really was a wooden box? The spirit spring water leaked out the moment it was put in. Not a single drop was left. What do we do? The two looked at each other for a while, and Lin Yi suddenly had an idea. He took a mineral water bottle and put the spirit spring water into the Wanyankin box. This way it wouldn't leak out. In the end, it really didn't leak anymore. Unfortunately, perhaps because of the mineral water bottle, the spirit spring water lost its effect, becoming no different from normal spring water. Lin Yi was speechless for a while, and finally shook his head. I don't have a choice. Looks like I'll have to go back to Sky Class Island and think of a way to refine this Wanyankin box again. I believe it won't take too long. Gooden, you'll have to stay in the village for the time being. It's fine, I'm not in a hurry. This way, I can practice in peace. Gooden was a little disappointed, but he wasn't too stubborn about going out. Plus, he couldn't just go out casually before he mastered it. What if he embarrassed Lin Yi? Okay, I'll come back to pick you up. Lin Yi patted Gooden's shoulder. This was his most important friend, and he had to help him fulfill this wish. Chapter 51:12. At the end of the day, Old Man Lin was his only relative. Since he was going to set the island as his base camp in the future, he had to let Old Man Lin have a look. As for Lin Yi, he went to another place. He wanted to meet Big Brother Dafeng in person. In the vast sea, a luxurious cruise ship sailed slowly. Its speed was almost slowed to the limit. From a distance, it did not seem to be moving at all. It looks luxurious on the outside, but there are mysteries hidden inside. No one would have thought that such a luxurious cruise ship is actually a branch of the Red Conches. Big Brother Dafeng, you're really bold. Lin Yi leaned on the railing and looked into the distance. The blue sky and the sea stretched as far as the eye could see. Even with his eyesight, he could not find a third thing. Heh boss, don't underestimate this luxury ship of mine. It's using the most advanced technology, and all communication signals are extremely secretive. Even the satellites in the sky won't be able to detect it. This is international waters, too, so they won't be able to reach that far. Dafeng Bro chuckled behind him. I mean, you actually dared to ask me to come here. Aren't you afraid of being discovered? Lin Yi glanced at him. The people he had to be wary of were naturally the people in the center. Be it the Red Conches or the Fire Wolves, the two were the same organization. They were both branches of the center. For Big Brother Dafeng, the real danger came from the center's headquarters. After all, he was now Lin Yi's spy. Boss Lin Yi, don't worry. The people in this cruise ship branch are all trustworthy. Furthermore, the branch has a lot of autonomy. As long as we don't take the initiative to report, even the headquarters won't know our exact location, Big Brother Dafeng said confidently. Oh, then do you know the exact location of the center's headquarters? Lin Yi asked. Ever since he discovered the Chamber of Commerce in the center on Heaven Island, his interest in the center had grown. It was rare for his primordial spirit to be projected back to the secular world. If there was a chance, he planned to infiltrate the center's headquarters to investigate. I really don't know about this. Rumor has it that the location of the central headquarters is not fixed. Only the people in the headquarters know the exact location. Big Brother Doffing shook his head and smiled bitterly. All these years, the central headquarters has let us do whatever we want. And we're also very secretive about the central headquarters. Aside from the routine report every once in a while, we basically have no interaction with them. Even if it's a routine report, it's only through satellite communication. To be honest, I still don't know what my superior looks like. Then can you think of a way? Lenny couldn't help but frown. The central organization was actually so cautious in their actions. They didn't even reveal the slightest flaw to their own subordinate organization. It was really unexpected. To be honest, Boss Lenny, ever since I received the letter you sent from Heaven Island 2 years ago, I've been trying in this regard. I've tried many methods but none of them succeeded. Half a year ago, I was the closest to success. My superior was ready to summon me to the headquarters, but I don't know why I was suddenly stopped. Thinking about it, it's a pity. Big Brother Doffing couldn't help but sigh. It wasn't just to spy for Lin-Yi. In fact, even he himself was very curious about the central headquarters. People had a thirst for knowledge. The more mysterious the central headquarters was, the more they, the subordinates, wanted to find opportunities to probe and understand. This was human nature. There's such a thing. Lenny thought for a moment and suddenly said, there must be a reason for the sudden stop. Could it be that you're being suspected? No way. Big Brother Doffing was shocked. He immediately shook his head and said disapprovingly, that's impossible. If the higher-ups were really suspicious of me, they would have taken action a long time ago. How could there be no movement for half a year? That's true. Lenny nodded. If the Central was really an extremely strict organization, once they were suspicious, they would definitely eliminate the root of the problem quickly to prevent future trouble. It was impossible for them to not take action for half a year. It seemed that he was indeed overthinking. To be honest, boss, your sudden return this time is too surprising. I thought you were joking when you called me before. I didn't expect it to be true. Big Brother Doffing smiled. You've worked hard these few years. Lenny sighed. Although he did not ask Big Brother Doffing to do anything particularly dangerous in the past few years, even if he did nothing, the sensitive identity of an undercover agent itself represented a huge risk. Not to mention, he still had to find a way to inquire about the central headquarters. Every attempt he made before was actually risky. This was a dangerous job that put his life on the line. Ordinary people might not be able to withstand such huge pressure. Boss Lin-Yi, what are you talking about? This is what I should do. Big Brother Doffing smiled. Lenny patted him on the shoulder. In fact, this time, Big Brother Doffing directly asked him to come to this cruise ship branch. In addition to showing that he had complete control of this branch, it was not difficult for Lin-Yi to guess another more important intention, to express his loyalty. Being an undercover agent was the most insecure and belonging profession in the world. Just like Big Brother Doffing, for the central headquarters, he was a traitor, but for Lin-Yi and the others, he might not be 100% trusted. After all, no one knew if he would secretly rebel again. As an undercover agent, the best way to show loyalty was to provide important information. However, because the central headquarters was too mysterious, Big Brother Doffing could not dig out any really valuable and important information in the past few years. Now that he was suddenly summoned by Lin-Yi, it would be a lie to say that he was not flustered at all. That was why they met on the cruise ship today. This meant that Big Brother Doffing was showing everything he had in front of Lin-Yi. If he wanted to rebel again in the future, these underlings of the cruise ship branch were a fatal danger. At that time, as long as one of them leaked information to Lin-Yi, he would die without a burial place. Going this far was no different from showing his loyalty. Lin-Yi could 100% trust his loyalty, but Big Brother Doffing had to pay a huge price for it. He was walking a tightrope. If one of the underlings of the cruise ship branch was unreliable and secretly leaked information to the central headquarters, he would also die without a burial place. Chapter 51:13. For Big Brother Dafeng to be able to do what he did today, it meant that he was not a fool. He would not do things that he was not confident about, or else he would have died long ago. Although Big Brother Dafeng did not say it, Lenny knew it. The two had a tacit understanding. While the two were talking, a fishing boat suddenly appeared in the distance. Unexpectedly, the fishing boat approached them. Seeing that Lenny seemed a little surprised, Big Brother Dafeng smiled and explained, "Boss, don't be surprised. Fishing boats are the best cover at sea. The people who go out on missions here all rely on fishing boats. It seems that Mute and the others are back." Mute? Lenny was stunned. "Yeah, a Mute Chinese man. I saved him at sea half a year ago. He used to be a special forces soldier abroad. He is clean and efficient. Sometimes he is better than Meng Gaohai and the others." Big Brother Dafeng nodded. Half a year ago, Lin Yi's expression changed slightly when he heard this. The timing was too coincidental. He could not help but remind, "Aren't you afraid that he is a spy sent by the central headquarters?" "No, don't worry, boss. I'm very cautious about this matter. This Mute is just an ordinary person. It happened because of the tsunami. When I saved him, he was already dead. Later on, as a last resort, I forcefully electrocuted him back to life. If he's really an undercover agent sent by the central headquarters, he wouldn't use this method to get close to me, right? Moreover, I found someone to check his background afterward. Everything is normal," Big Brother Dafeng said confidently. "It is better to be safe than sorry." Lenny nodded. At this time, a ladder had been set up between the fishing boat and the cruise ship. A dark-skinned young man with a buzz cut walked over quickly. He looked a bit like a special forces soldier. Even his walk showed a rare courage and capability. Mute walked over and nodded to Big Brother Dafeng. He then handed over a file, but his eyes fell on Lin Yi with some scrutiny. Not bad, not bad. You are really good. This file can save our branch a lot of trouble. Go get your reward." Big Brother Dafeng opened the file and looked through it. His face was full of praise. Yes, yes, Mute responded. He looked deeply into Lin Yi's eyes before turning around to leave. At this time, Lin Yi suddenly said, "You said he's an ordinary person?" "That's right. Although he was in the special forces, isn't he just an ordinary person compared to a cultivator?" Big Brother Feng nodded in surprise. "Then you've really made a mistake. This is a true early-stage foundation establishment expert, also known as a Heaven Dao stage expert in the secular world. Although he hid his aura very well, and could easily fool you Heaven stage experts, it's not very realistic for him to hide from my senses. If I'm not wrong, you should be a spy sent by the central headquarters, right?" Lenny stared at Mute with an indifferent expression. "What?" Big Brother Feng was shocked. Mute stopped in his tracks and turned around to look at Lenny warily. Finally he said, "You are Lenny? Oh, you know me?" Lenny raised his eyebrows slightly. "This guy tried everything to find out about the central headquarters just to work for you?" Mute glanced at the shocked Big Brother Feng and continued to ask. "That's right. Just to investigate a Heaven stage perfect stage expert. You didn't hesitate to send an early stage foundation establishment expert. Moreover, you've been undercover for half a year. You're really the only one in the central headquarters to be this cautious." Lenny smiled faintly. "Very good. Looks like my mission can end here." Mute suddenly laughed. In the past half a year, in order to gain Big Brother Feng's trust, a dignified early-stage foundation establishment expert, like him, had to run errands for someone else. If it wasn't for completing the mission, he would have already turned hostile and quit. Is that so? Then can you answer a question of mine? Don't worry, it's not a confidential question from the central headquarters. It's just to satisfy my curiosity. Seeing that the other party didn't make a move, Lenny asked, "If I don't appear, how long will you be undercover here?" "A year. If there's no substantial evidence in a year, then he's innocent. Of course, there's no need for that now. As long as there's evidence, the undercover plan will automatically turn into a purge plan." Mute grinned. He was in a good mood at the moment, and didn't mind answering this kind of unimportant question. Besides, everyone in this cruise ship branch, including Lin Yi and Big Brother Feng, was already a pile of dead people in his eyes. Of course, There was nothing to hide in front of dead people. Lin Yi and Big Brother Feng looked at each other and suddenly shook their heads regretfully. What a pity. What's a pity? A pity that you're going to be buried in the sea soon? Mute revealed a somewhat playful expression. He was a dignified early-stage foundation establishment expert. In this secular world, he was an invincible existence. He didn't think that anyone here could escape from his palm. It's a pity that I don't know the soul-searching technique. Otherwise, I should be able to learn a lot of useful things from you. Isn't that a pity? Lin Yi smiled as if nothing had happened. You can't be so naive to think that you can deal with me, right? Mute was immediately amused and sneered. Although I don't know how you saw through my realm, it doesn't mean anything. In the secular world, there has never been an expert who can fight against a foundation establishment expert. There hasn't been one in the past, and there won't be one in the future. Tisk tsk, there's a limit to your ignorance. Now that the Archaic Alliance has appeared out of nowhere, there are foundation establishment experts everywhere. There are even Golden Core experts. You don't even know such a big thing. Don't you read books or read newspapers? Ignorance can kill people, Lin Yi said with a serious face. How is this possible? Mute was shocked when he heard that. In the past 6 months, he had not done anything other than focusing on being an undercover by Big Brother Feng's side. He had not even heard of the Archaic Alliance. Everything is possible. Be more careful in your next life. As Lin Yi said that, he suddenly slapped him. A dragon's roar sounded out of nowhere. Mute was shocked and wanted to jump off the ship to escape. Lin Yi was now unfathomable in his eyes. He didn't dare to act rashly before he had a clear idea of Lin Yi's strength. It didn't matter even if Lin Yi was stronger than him. As long as he escaped and sent the news back to the central headquarters, the experts from the headquarters would come to take care of him. He just needed to keep his life. Chapter 51:14. Plop. In the end, Mute didn't manage to escape Lin Yi's slap. The 5 elements killing aura was an absolute killer move for a foundation establishment realm master like him. After leaving a trail of blood in the air, he sank into the sea of corpses. It was easier to kill people on the high seas, and there was no need to destroy the corpses. Boss, it's over just like that? Doffing Bro couldn't help but gulp. His legs felt weak when he found out that Mute was a spy, especially when he heard that this guy was a Skydao stage master. He was scared out of his wits, and in the blink of an eye, he was slapped to death by Lin Yi. This turn of events happened too quickly, and he couldn't accept it. What else can I do? Lin Yi glanced at him, thinking that although his sudden appearance had exposed Dafeng Bro, he'd also gotten rid of a huge problem for him. Coming here wasn't a mistake. Otherwise, if Dafeng Bro's contact with Wu Chintian was discovered by this guy in the future, and he wasn't there, that would be a real problem. That's too scary. The Central HQ actually sent out such a master just to investigate a small fry like me. They really think highly of me. Doffing Bro trembled in fear and quickly smoked a cigarette to calm himself down. You should think about it carefully. See if there are any other suspicious people under you. If there are, take care of them quickly in case you lose your life in the future, Lin Yi reminded him. Doffing Bro frowned and thought carefully for a long time. He shook his head and said, No, there's only Mute among the newcomers these 2 years. The others are just insignificant people. Boss, can you help me take a look again? He was originally very confident, but after today's incident, he felt uneasy. What if there were other traitors hidden among the subordinates of the cruise branch? I saw these people on the cruise when I came up. They are all ordinary people. Even if they aren't very strong. They shouldn't be people from the Central HQ. It's not hard to understand. This time, the Central HQ sent out an early-stage foundation establishment realm master to investigate you. It's more than enough to send someone else. Your real problem is actually this Mute. Lin Yi frowned slightly. Boss, are you saying that the Central Headquarters will still suspect me after he dies? Big Brother Feng was shocked again. That's right. We don't know how he got in contact with Central Headquarters, nor do we know what he reported before. With his death, Central Headquarters will definitely take action. However, The silver lining in the misfortune is that he is an early-stage foundation establishment expert. Lenny suddenly laughed. What do you mean? Big Brother Fong did not understand. With his early-stage foundation establishment strength, you guys definitely won't be able to kill him, so the center won't put the suspicion on you guys. It just so happens that the Archaic Alliance is training in the secular world. Only the Archaic Alliance has the strength to kill him, so the center's attention will be on the Archaic Alliance. Lenny analyzed. I see. That's good. I really have to thank the Archaic Alliance for taking the blame for me. Big Brother Fong breathed a sigh of relief. But don't be too careless. Central Headquarters might send more people over. Try to keep a low profile from now on. Don't contact Wu Chintian and the others if there's nothing important. Wait for everything to blow over first, Lenny reminded. Don't worry, boss. Our Red Conches is a big force in the country. With the current situation, if Central Headquarters really wants to do something to me, it's the same as uprooting the entire branch. Unless they find concrete evidence, they won't do anything to me. Big Brother Fong finally regained his composure and patted his chest confidently. Yes, it's still the same thing. Be careful. Remember that. Lenny reminded him again. No matter what, Big Brother Fong was already one of them. He didn't want anything to happen to him. Big Brother Fong nodded repeatedly. On the other hand, Lenny was suspicious. Since when did Central Headquarters get an early-stage foundation establishment expert? It wouldn't be strange to say that this person was from the Archaic Alliance. But this was a spy sent half a year ago. With the spiritual energy in the mortal world, how could there be an early-stage foundation establishment expert? Boss Lenny, do you think I should use this opportunity to test the HQ's reaction? Dafeng Bro suddenly had an idea. Lin Yi's eyes lit up. This was indeed an opportunity. However, he immediately shook his head. This mute is a spy sent by Central Headquarters. In theory, you don't know his identity. How are you going to report to Central Headquarters? There's no point in bringing it up. Instead, it will only increase the danger for you. Once Central Headquarters becomes suspicious of you, your situation won't be good. Since Central Headquarters had the ability to send an early-stage foundation establishment expert to infiltrate, it would be a piece of cake to take Big Brother Feng's life, as long as they made up their mind. Yes, I know it's risky, but it's a rare opportunity. Don't you think so, boss? Big Brother Feng was still excited about his brilliant idea. Well, it's indeed a rare opportunity. What are you going to say? You can't say that you accidentally discovered the mute's identity and accidentally killed this guy, right? Lenny looked at him. Of course not. Boss, didn't you just mention the Archaic Alliance? I'll just push all the blame to the Archaic Alliance. Also, it's almost time for the routine report. It shouldn't be too abrupt to mention this to them, right? Big Brother Feng smiled confidently. That's right, but since we're going to do this, we have to design the wording. Even if it's not perfect, it has to at least be undetectable. Lenny pondered for a moment, and the corner of his mouth suddenly curled up. I have a good idea. Half an hour later, Dafeng Bro brought Lenny to his personal office. There was nothing else other than a desk and a computer. Big Brother Feng gave Lenny a look and turned on the computer. There was only one program on the desktop, Call Request. This was Big Brother Feng's only authority. He could request to report to Central Headquarters every month. Of course, the decision was not up to him. Whether he had this opportunity or not depended on the higher-ups. Chapter 51:15. 2 more days. Then maybe there's something wrong with my computer. The ship almost capsized a few days ago, and the water got in. The dates are probably wrong. Big Brother Dafeng scratched his head awkwardly. Lenny had already stood in the blind spot behind the computer to ensure that he wouldn't be seen by the other party. Almost capsized. How did you almost capsize? Didn't your cruise ship branch say that it's impregnable? Why can't you even deal with a natural disaster? The middle-aged man reprimanded in surprise. Sir, it's not a natural disaster this time. It's a man-made disaster. Big Brother Dafeng had a bitter face for a long time before he squeezed out a sentence. There's a monster. What did you say? Although the middle-aged man's face couldn't be seen clearly, he definitely didn't look good from his voice. At this moment, the words were written on his face. Are you fucking kidding me? It's true. A huge worm more than 10 meters long suddenly emerged from the water to eat people. It's very powerful. Our entire cruise ship branch was almost capsized by it. I've been at sea for a long time, but I've never seen such a ferocious and terrifying thing. I've never heard of it. Big Brother Doffing's face was full of fear. Seeing that Big Brother Doffing's expression didn't seem to be fake, the middle-aged man's voice softened a little. He asked, "Tell me clearly, what kind of worm is it? I've never seen it before, but I think it's called something like a blood corpse worm." Big Brother Doffing scratched his head. Blood corpse worm? The middle-aged man paused, and then his tone became suspicious. Since you've never seen it before, how do you know it's called a blood corpse worm? Because it's being controlled by someone. That person has been riding on its head from the beginning to the end. He claims to be from the Archaic Alliance, and he seems to be someone from the evil warding sect. Anyway, he looks very powerful. He even said that when this blood corpse worm really grows up, he can control the world. I think there might be something wrong with his head. Doffing Bro explained everything in detail. Lenny had taught him all this, and instead of pushing the blame onto the Archaic Alliance, he might as well push the blame onto Sun Baishu. That would be perfect, and there'd be no evidence to back it up. Did you say the Primeval Alliance? The middle-aged man's tone turned solemn. It seemed like he'd heard of the Archaic Alliance before, and this wasn't out of Lin Yi's expectations. The center had such a huge power and information network in the common world, and the Archaic Alliance had caused such a huge commotion this time. It'd be weird if the headquarters hadn't heard anything about it. That's right. That person even shamelessly claimed to be a Heaven Dao stage expert. But he's just a fool. Aside from that big worm of his that's a little scary, his strength is simply a mess. Any ordinary subordinate on our side can easily kill him. To think that we were scared of him at first. Now that I think about it, it's simply too embarrassing. Big Brother Foam was very embarrassed and regretful. An ordinary subordinate killed him? The middle-aged man was shocked. Although the Central Command's headquarters wasn't here, and the Red Conch was the only real large-scale branch force in the country, it was obviously not strong enough. Therefore, it was difficult to obtain first-hand information in time. However, some basic information was still known. The disciples of the Archaic Alliance, who came out to the secular world, were indeed Heaven Dao stage experts. If Big Brother Doffing wasn't lying, then the person who dealt with the Archaic Alliance's Heaven Dao stage expert wouldn't be an ordinary subordinate. It must be an expert of the corresponding level. He had already vaguely guessed who it was. Yes, it's a mute that I personally rescued half a year ago. Although he used to be a special forces soldier overseas, he's just an ordinary person. This kid is loyal and brave. At that time, we were so scared that we didn't dare to move, but he rushed up and fought with that guy without saying anything. The two of them, and that big worm fought for a while in the sea, but in the end, no one floated up. We're probably all dead. It's a pity that it's not easy to find such a loyal subordinate. Big Brother Doffing sighed with regret. No one floated up. How could this be? Didn't you send someone to salvage them? The middle-aged man's voice suddenly became anxious. Boss, we made a lot of noise at the time. In order to escape, we fled from the high seas to the coast. After they sank, even the Coast Guard ship came over. We could only leave quickly, or we would be wiped out. Big Brother Fong said with a bitter face. Boss, we made a lot of noise at the time. The middle-aged man couldn't help but fall silent. Sir, I sent someone to sneak back the second day after the incident. There was nothing left. It must have been swept away by the tide. Big Brother Doffing said carefully. You, the middle-aged man, was obviously a little hesitant. However, from Big Brother Doffing's point of view, there was nothing wrong with the way the matter was handled. Even as a superior, he couldn't casually ask questions for no reason. After all, Big Brother Doffing was the leader of Red Conch's branch in the country. For the Central Command, even if he wasn't a real feudal official, he was still a big figure. The middle-aged man was silent for a moment and suddenly said, Wait a moment. I'll give you instructions later. Yes. Big Brother Dafeng nodded, and then saw the other party cut off the communication. He finally breathed a sigh of relief. Lin Yi, who was standing in the opposite corner, looked at each other and smiled. Although he had rehearsed his words many times, when he actually said it, it still made him break out in a cold sweat. He was afraid that he would accidentally reveal some flaws. Fortunately, from the reaction of this person, he most likely believed it. Lin Yi also breathed a sigh of relief. Now that the bait was successfully cast, whether or not they could successfully catch a big fish depended on the other party's next actions and reactions. Everything was done, and the rest was up to fate. In the headquarters of the common world, after the middle-aged man cut off the communication with Big Brother Dafeng, he quickly walked to a secret research room. At this time, a woman was currently observing the human experiment in the isolation room. If Wang Xingyan was here, she would definitely be shocked, because this woman was her roommate, Lan Xiaoru. Professor Lan, it's bad. The middle-aged man rushed in with a panicked expression. What are you panicking for, Professor Glasses? You're an old man here. You're not allowed to barge into the laboratory during the experiment. Have you forgotten this basic rule? Lan Xiaoru glared at the middle-aged man with dissatisfaction. Ugh, yes, I forgot myself. The professor couldn't help but feel embarrassed. Tell me, what's making you so panicked? Lan Xiaoru asked. The professor took a deep breath and said in a deep voice, something happened to number 1. Chapter 51:16. The number 1 they were talking about was Mute, who was working undercover beside Dafeng. With number 1's early-stage foundation establishment realm strength, there should be no danger in doing such a small thing. That was why they sent him out with ease. Who would have thought that an early-stage foundation establishment realm expert would get into trouble? Was there really something wrong with Dafeng? Lan Xiaoru was shocked. She had this suspicion since half a year ago. Although Big Brother Feng did not mention it openly, it was too obvious that he was trying all kinds of ways to inquire about the central headquarters. It was not strange for the branch members to have this kind of curiosity, but it was rare to see someone as proactive as him. With Lan Xiaoru's cautious and suspicious personality, she naturally had to do a thorough investigation. However, even if Dafeng could control the entire Red Conch branch, it was impossible for him to deal with number 1 with his manpower and strength. After all, he was an early-stage foundation establishment realm expert. Even if he was outnumbered, he should at least be able to escape, right? According to Dafeng's report, it said that it was done by a Heavenly Dao realm expert from the Archaic Alliance. That person even tamed a huge blood corpse bug. Number 1 fought with him in the sea, and after that, there was no trace of him. They probably died together. The Glasses doctor sighed. Archaic Alliance? How did they offend the Archaic Alliance? Lan Xiaoru frowned. In fact, ever since she found out that the Archaic Alliance had appeared, she had been sending people to investigate the Archaic Alliance. Although she hadn't made any direct contact, she still knew a lot of things through various channels. She couldn't help but ask doubtfully, why did I hear that the people from the Archaic Alliance have been summoned back? I didn't ask in detail. I only heard that person seemed to be from the evil warding sect. He should be one of the few cultivators that the Archaic Alliance left outside. The doctor in Glasses speculated. Maybe. Lan Xiaoru's expression was unfathomable. After a moment of silence, she snorted. Damn it. In the first batch of 10, only 1 succeeded. Now the second batch has encountered a bottleneck because they couldn't find a suitable test subject. I didn't expect that the only surviving number 1 would get into trouble. How do you want me to explain this to the higher-ups? Dr. Lan, I have an idea. The doctor in Glasses suddenly smiled. What idea? Lan Xiaoru looked at him and asked. With the conditions in the secular world, finding a suitable experimental subject is like looking for a needle in a haystack. This is the key reason why we've encountered a bottleneck. But don't we have a ready-made target now? The bespectacled doctor smiled sinisterly. You mean the Archaic Alliance? Lan Xiaoru frowned. That's right, Professor Lan. Think about it carefully. Our mission is to mass-produce foundation establishment experts, and it would be best if we could achieve that in the secular world. But since we've reached a bottleneck, there's no harm in changing our thinking. If we can find a way to get a foundation establishment expert from the Archaic Alliance, it'll be much easier to control him than to make one ourselves, right? The bespectacled doctor adjusted his trademark black-rimmed glasses. Go on, Lon Cheru said calmly. As long as we can control the first one, it'll be much easier to get the second and third. That way, it won't be long before we can control a large number of foundation establishment experts. This way, not only will we be able to fulfill the requirements of the higher-ups, but we might even be able to go one step further and start mass production of golden core experts. After all, those people are from the Archaic Alliance, and their qualities will definitely be much better than the cultivators in the secular world. With them as the experimental subjects, the success rate will definitely be much higher. The more the bespectacled doctor spoke, the more excited he became. In his opinion, this was a genius idea. That's not a bad idea. Lon Cheru couldn't help but feel a little tempted when she heard this. She was very clear that mass-producing foundation establishment experts was only the first step. The next step was to continue mass-producing golden core experts. With the conditions of the secular world's experimental samples, even foundation establishment experts would be hard to satisfy, let alone golden core experts. For their experiments, the quality of the samples was the most crucial factor in determining success or failure. The same experiment method could easily succeed on Heavenly Island, but it wouldn't work in the secular world. No matter how much they improved it, the success rate would never increase. In the end, it was because the quality of the samples was too poor. They couldn't compare to Heavenly Island at all. But now, the Archaic Alliance suddenly appeared. Even if their strength couldn't compare to Heavenly Island, it was much, much higher than the secular world. This was practically a ready-made human body material delivered to their doorstep. Professor Lon, the second batch of human experiments has been at a stalemate for half a year now, and there hasn't been any substantial progress. Even if the higher-ups don't say anything, they will definitely be dissatisfied in private. We need to produce results urgently, the bespectacled doctor urged. But this matter with the Archaic Alliance is no small matter. If the news gets out, it will be a huge threat to our headquarters. This matter must be reported to the higher-ups and discussed. We can't act rashly. Lon Cheru finally managed to maintain her rationality. This kind of thing would cause a huge mess if she were to act rashly. Yes, this matter is of great importance. We definitely have to ask the higher-ups. The bespectacled doctor quickly agreed. Right, transfer Doffing over. He's the branch's leader, and he has been in direct contact with the Archaic Alliance. He should know some useful information. Have a good chat with him, Lon Cheru ordered. Okay. The bespectacled doctor nodded. As for his previous suspicions about Doffing, he temporarily put them aside. After all, Number 1 had been investigating for half a year without finding anything substantial. It could be seen that there shouldn't be any problems with this person. Not to mention, even if he was transferred to the central headquarters, he wouldn't have access to any core secrets. Even if there was a problem, it wouldn't be a problem. A moment later, the bespectacled doctor conveyed Lon Cheru's order. Doffing couldn't help but be overjoyed when he heard it. It was just a flash of inspiration, but he didn't expect that he would actually be able to deceive the other party. Even Linny didn't expect things to go so smoothly. He had always wanted to inquire about the various matters of the central headquarters. Now that Doffing was directly transferred to the central headquarters, because of this matter, he could easily obtain first-hand information. This was truly a pleasant surprise. Chapter 51:17. Got it, boss. I value my life, so I definitely won't do anything stupid. Boss Linny, just wait for my good news. Big Brother Doffing patted his chest. Linny could not help but worry when he saw Big Brother Doffing's careless look. However, Big Brother Doffing was a meticulous person, and he had a lot of social experience. He should have no problem protecting himself if he was careful. Lenny did not need to worry. While the Central Headquarters private plane had not arrived, Lenny explained some things about the Archaic Alliance to Big Brother Dafeng. It was foreseeable that the people at the Central Headquarters would definitely ask about these things. If Big Brother Dafeng acted like he did not know anything, it meant that he had lost his value. At that time, not only would it be difficult to investigate deeper core secrets, but his own safety would also become difficult to guarantee. After all, worthless trash had no human rights to speak of. Of course, Lenny couldn't tell him too much, or it'd look unnatural if he accidentally spilled the beans. What he could and couldn't know was up to him. Only he could help Dafeng Bro check on these things. Everything was ready. 2 hours later, a helicopter appeared above the cruise ship. Big Brother Dafeng and Lin Yi, who was hiding in the dark, looked at each other, took a deep breath, and climbed the rope ladder. The helicopter did not stop for long, and soon became a small black dot. A helicopter? Is the Central Headquarters not far from this place? Lenny could not help but be a little surprised, but he immediately overturned his thoughts. Although the helicopter's flight radius was very limited, no one said that this helicopter would take Big Brother Dafeng to the Central Headquarters. Maybe it was just the first stop. It turned out that Lin Yi's speculation was right. The helicopter was indeed just the first stop. After Big Brother Dafeng was dropped directly into an open space in the deep forest, a small transport plane soon appeared above his head. It was a military transport plane with vertical takeoff and landing capabilities. This equipment really shocked Big Brother Dafeng. However, on second thought, the Central Headquarters was so unpredictable, this level was just a piece of cake. After the transport plane landed, the hatch opened automatically. It was a completely enclosed room. Although there were some entertainment facilities such as televisions, there was not even a window to look outside. Brother Dafeng deliberately waited outside for a long time. He wanted to get close to the pilot. If he was lucky, he might be able to get some useful information in advance, such as the specific location of the Central Headquarters. In the end, the pilot didn't arrive. Instead, an electronic voice kept urging him to board the plane. Brother Dafeng was stunned for a moment before sneaking around to the high slope in front of him to take a look. Only then did he realize that this was a freaking unmanned vehicle. No wonder no one had come down to greet him for a long time. Brother Dafeng had no choice but to board the plane. Sure enough, as soon as he walked into the room, his phone signal instantly turned to 0. Even the satellite navigation was useless. He originally wanted to use this method to record the route and the Central Headquarters location, but it seemed like he was overthinking it. After flying for half a day, Big Brother Feng fell asleep. When he woke up, the plane had already landed. When Big Brother Feng walked out of the hatch and took a look, he was stunned again. His phone still had no signal, and the satellite navigation was still useless. There was no topography in front of him that could help him determine his location, because this was an underground airport. You are Dafeng, right? Come with me, Dr. Glasses is waiting for you. A man in a white assistant uniform came over and said, "Oh, okay." Brother Dafeng quickly followed. Although he didn't know who Dr. Glasses was, he could basically guess. It was most likely his superior. He followed the man through the airport and entered the elevator. A moment later, the elevator door opened. Brother Dafeng looked at the busy scene in front of him and rubbed his eyes. He asked subconsciously, "This is the Central Headquarters?" "That's right. This is the Central Headquarters." The man nodded. Over the past few years, Big Brother Feng had fantasized about what the data center's headquarters would look like countless times. In his mind, for such an unfathomable organization like the data center, the headquarters must be a place where all the heroes gathered, and anyone who passed by must be a notorious fiend. However, the scene in front of him was completely different. It was a huge hall. All kinds of people came and went, men and women, old and young. The only thing they had in common was that almost all of them were wearing white lab coats. All of them seemed very busy. Even when they were walking, they were talking to each other. It sounded very academic and profound. Above each exit around the hall, the name of the area was marked. Human Biochemistry, Intelligence, Weapons. Obviously, These were the research directions of each area. Brother Doffing couldn't help but swallow his saliva. This was not the central headquarters he imagined. It was simply a cutting-edge scientific research base. Let's go. Dr. Glass's patience is limited. The man urged in front. Oh, are we all researchers here? Brother Doffing casually probed. This floor is in charge of scientific research. I don't know what other departments or people there are, but they must be on other floors. Unless there are special circumstances, you can't go to other floors at will. Of course, you can't just walk around the various experimental areas on this floor. I think Dr. Glasses will give you a pass later. You can go and you can go. Swipe the pass and you will know, the man explained. Okay. Brother Doffing couldn't help but be a little disappointed. It seemed that even if he came to the central headquarters, it would not be easy to find out valuable core information. The man brought Brother Doffing to the door of a research room. After swiping the pass and entering, Brother Doffing saw a middle-aged man wearing huge black-rimmed glasses. He was dark and thin, but his eyes were extremely sinister and sharp. Okay, go do what you need to do. Sample number 7's condition is a little unstable. Go and give him a bottle of tranquilizer. The bespectacled doctor instructed, and then turned to Brother Doffing. Doffing, this is your first time coming to the central headquarters. What do you think? Hearing this familiar hoarse voice, Brother Doffing was sure that the other party was indeed his superior. He quickly said respectfully, reporting to the superior. It feels different from what I expected. It looks like a scientific research base. Yes, this is a scientific research base. Do you know why I transferred you here? The bespectacled doctor smiled. I don't know. Brother Doffing shook his head. Chapter 51:18. Really? Thank you for the promotion. This subordinate will definitely go through fire and water, and will not hesitate to die. Big Brother Fong had seen this kind of scene many times before, and his grateful expression was very good. Haha, it's not that serious. Just do your job well. The doctor smiled with satisfaction and said, All right, let's get down to business. Tell me everything you know about the Archaic Alliance, especially the encounter with the expert from the evil warding sect. Don't miss anything, understand? Yes. Big Brother Fong quickly nodded. According to what Lenny had told him before, Doffing quietly revealed some things about the Archaic Alliance. The glasses doctor's eyes lit up after listening to it. He secretly thought that Miss Lon really had foresight. Although what Doffing said was not difficult to find out, and was not as comprehensive as the central headquarters, there were some details that had never been noticed, and were very valuable. Sir, that's all I know. Big Brother Feng's expression was very honest. Good, very good. The things you said are very useful. Stay here and be my assistant, the doctor said with satisfaction. Assistant? Oh, then what should I do next? Big Brother Doffing quickly asked. Aside from the specific location of the central headquarters, what he wanted to figure out the most at the moment was the so-called primordial research group. However, he had just arrived here, so he couldn't just ask about these things. Haste makes waste, so he had to take things step by step. There's no rush. Familiarize yourself here for 2 days. I will tell you if there are any missions. This is your pass. Your room number is written on it. Go and rest for a while. Remember not to wander around. You only have the basic access right now. Other than my room and the public living area, you can't go anywhere else, the doctor said. Understood. Big Brother Fong saluted with a serious expression. Haha, don't be so serious. This is a research base, not a combat base. Just be natural. The doctor smiled and turned to leave. It seemed that he had obtained a lot of valuable information from Big Brother Fong. He was in a good mood. The doctor was in a good mood. However, Big Brother Fong was not in a good mood. Although everything had gone smoothly so far, at least he had not revealed any flaws. Judging from the other party's attitude, he had already gained the initial trust, and knew that he was about to join the primordial research group. Everything looked perfect, but the problem was that they didn't get any substantial information at all. What was even more troublesome was that even if he managed to find out the key information, there was no way for him to pass it to Lin Yi. All signals in this place were blocked. and no one was allowed to walk around. What could he do? Damn, I can only take it one step at a time, Brother Doffing muttered. He took the pass and began to wander around. However, he had to familiarize himself with the places that he could go first. As for the places that he couldn't enter, he would think of a way later. What Doffing Bro didn't know was that from the moment he entered the HQ, his every move was under surveillance. Fortunately, he listened to Lin Yi's advice and acted cautiously, or else he would have been caught a long time ago. On the other side, the doctor ran to Lan Xiaoru excitedly to report the situation. However, as soon as he entered the door, he saw Lan Xiaoru fuming. The reason was simple. The second batch of experimental samples was wiped out again. Dr. Lan, it has been proven that this path is not working. It's time for us to change our way of thinking, the doctor advised. Lan Xiaoru was silent for a moment. After she suppressed all her anger, she slowly said, I have already reported to the higher-ups. The higher-ups mean that this is not a trivial matter, and we must be careful. Does that mean we are not allowed to do it? The doctor was a little disappointed. The center never kept idle people. If they wanted to truly gain a foothold in the central headquarters, or even move up a level, they must have results that could be taken care of. However, there was no future in this situation. It's not that we can't do it. We just have to be careful. If anything goes wrong, you and I will have to take full responsibility, Lan Xiaoru said lightly. What do you mean, Dr. Lan? The doctor looked at her. I was still hesitating, but there is no other choice now that things have come to this. Lan Xiaoru looked at the annihilated second batch of experimental bodies inside. Although the overall strength of the secular world couldn't compare to that of Heaven Stage Island, it was still an important part of the organization. If the secular world didn't make any progress, it would drag down the expansion of the entire organization. At this point, they had no choice but to take the risk. Dr. Lan, rest assured, I just obtained a lot of valuable information from Dafeng. As long as we plan carefully, there won't be any problems, the doctor quickly said. Lan Xiaoru nodded and said, Okay, go and gather all the top 10 doctors here. I want them in every field. I want to form an archaic research group. What about Dafeng? The doctor asked. Lan Xiaoru thought for a moment and said, Give him a peripheral position first. He has some understanding of the Archaic Alliance, and is also the leader of the Red Conch branch. He should be of some use. Okay. The doctor nodded repeatedly. 10 minutes later, everyone was gathered in the first conference room. Even Dafeng, who had just arrived, was called over as a peripheral researcher. However, he was sitting at the very edge, looking at Lan Xiaoru and the other core members of the central headquarters. Dafeng couldn't help feeling excited. Just taking pictures of these people was a rare and important piece of information. Unfortunately, he didn't dare to do so. Even a fool knew that there would be all kinds of surveillance cameras here. If he made the slightest movement, he would be courting death. Not to mention, even if he took pictures, he wouldn't be able to send them out. But in any case, it was already a delightful harvest for Dafeng to be able to enter this conference room. As long as he patiently lurked here, it was only a matter of time before he obtained the key information. Everyone, the Archean Research Group is officially established from today onwards. This is a crucial project that concerns the future of our central headquarters. The success or failure of this project rests on everyone's shoulders. I hope everyone will do their best. Lan Xiaoru made the introductory remarks. Dr. Lan, what is the main topic of the Archaic Research Group? Someone raised his hand and asked. It's very simple. Capture the cultivators of the Archaic Alliance, and use biotechnology to brainwash them. We will use them for our own purposes. Lan Xiaoru bluntly said. Chapter 5119. He had already learned a lot about the Archaic Alliance from Lin Yi, so he naturally knew what kind of existence the Archaic Alliance was. He didn't expect that the central headquarters would actually target these people. Their courage was simply out of this world. What kind of existence is the Archaic Alliance? These professors had always been focused on their own research, So only a few of them had a specific concept of the so-called Archaic Alliance. The summary of the information about the Archaic Alliance has been sent to your computers. You will know the details once you take a look. Lan Xiaoru pointed to the laptops in front of everyone. In fact, many people were already looking at it long before she said this. However, not all of them had this kind of treatment. At least, the peripheral researchers sitting at the edge didn't have this kind of treatment. Seeing this, Big Brother Feng couldn't help but feel pity. Otherwise, he could find out how much these people knew about the Archaic Alliance. This way, he would have more confidence in his words and actions in the future. At least the Foundation establishment stage. Since the Archaic Alliance's cultivators are so strong, with our strength here, I'm afraid we won't be able to deal with them, right? Someone immediately questioned. Yes, and they are all gathered together now. There is no chance of making a move. Others also shook their heads. Everyone, even if they are Foundation establishment stage experts, as long as we plan carefully, it is not impossible to pick the weakest among them. As for them being gathered together, it is not a bad thing for our plan. On the contrary, it is a great thing for us. Lan Xiaoru smiled slightly. What do you mean? Everyone was puzzled. It's very simple. Although most of them are gathered together, not all of them have been summoned back. There are still some people who are active in the secular world. These people are basically acting alone, so they are the best candidates for us to target. On the contrary, if all of them were moving normally, then we would have to consider it carefully, because that means that it is very likely that they will help each other. And right now, there are not many people moving around outside, and they are scattered all over the place. As long as we target them, we won't be able to call for help even if we call for help. Lan Xiaoru said confidently. Professor Lan, may I ask how we can deal with the Foundation establishment stage experts of the Archaic Alliance? I heard that the first test subject that succeeded the first time has been killed. Can the Heavenly Island send reinforcements? Someone immediately asked. That is impossible. The teleportation channel that connects here to the Heavenly Island can only send dead objects. The success rate of sending living people is very low. It is not reliable to pin our hopes on such a small probability. Someone immediately shook his head and objected. Everyone was talking, and Big Brother Feng, who was sitting on the edge, was dumbfounded. Although the central headquarters definitely had the means to travel between Heaven Island and the secular world, which had been confirmed by the previous letter, he was still shocked when he heard it with his own ears. The strength of the central headquarters was really amazing. We don of the Heavenly Island's reinforcements. We have the ability ourselves. Lan Xiaoru paused and slowly swept her gaze around the room. She spat out 3 words, Hunter Team. As soon as he said that, everyone fell silent. Brother Dafeng did not understand what he meant, but the core doctors of the central headquarters knew the weight of these 3 words very well. This was because every one of them would immediately equip this mysterious team with their latest research results. This was a card that the central headquarters rarely played, a trump card. Hengshui City was a small but bustling coastal city. In every aspect, Hengshui City was on a completely different level from the other cities, but it was extremely famous for one thing. This was also the source of its prosperity, the prostitutes on the outskirts. This was the concentration camp of the prostitutes in the country, and also a paradise for the upper class. Finding prostitutes was the practice of country bumpkins. After reaching a certain level, if you really wanted to find a woman, you would definitely look for a prostitute. Be it their appearance or temperament, they were not something an ordinary prostitute could compare to. Of course, the price was naturally not something an ordinary prostitute could compare to. The Shuiheng building, as a landmark of Shuiheng City, was a paradise of paradise. Those who entered and exited this place were either rich or noble. Only the top prostitutes were qualified to accompany them. Ordinary people could not even enter the door. However, on this day, the top floor of the Shuiheng building was booked by a super-rich second-generation heir. He only had one guest, a man in red who looked to be in his 20s or 30s. Young master, you haven't been here for a long time. Why are you suddenly in the mood today? Why didn't you call earlier? We could have dressed up a little. A few prostitutes in extremely simple clothes pushed the door open and laughed. Each and every one of them was charming, pure, sexy, and cute. They were all top-notch beauties that were rarely seen in the outside world. "Why are you guys so slow? You made us wait for a few minutes. Hurry up and apologize to Big Brother Jing." Young Master Yu waved his hand and at the same time, turned to the man in red and said, "Big Brother Jing, what do you think of them?" The man in red looked at the prostitutes lecherously. He nodded and shook his head. Not bad, but they're still lacking a little." Lacking a little? Young Master Yu was stunned for a moment. He looked at the scene of the man in red taking advantage of the prostitutes, and immediately understood. "I understand. I'll call a few more over." The prostitutes were all perceptive people. Seeing that young Master Yu was so respectful to the man in red, they knew that he must have a great background. They immediately became even more attentive and asked in a coquettish voice, "Big Brother Jing, where are you from?" "Thousand Blades Sect." The red-clothed man grinned as he embraced the women and molested them without restraint. He looked like a hungry lecher. "The Thousand Blades Sect? What kind of place is that? I've never heard of it." "Big Brother Jing, you didn't just randomly make up a place to fool us, did you?" The prostitutes laughed and flattered him, but they were also confused. The man in red laughed. He really wasn't making this up. His name was Jing Taiyang, and he was an expert from the Immemorial Alliance's Thousand Blades Sect. The Thousand Blades Sect had always been strict. He didn't have the chance to get close to women in the Immemorial Alliance. Now that he had finally come to the secular world, he naturally wanted to enjoy himself. Chapter 51:20. A moment later, a young woman wearing a sexy short qipao walked in, as if there was no one else around. Jing Taiyang was instantly stunned. This woman was pure and charming in one. Young Master Yu was also drooling, but he couldn't help but ask with some doubt, "Who are you? Why haven't I seen you before?" Xiaonu is called Hong Yang. As the young woman spoke, she walked straight towards Jing Taiyang. Jing Taiyang hurriedly pushed away the women around him to make way for her. Although these women were also pretty good-looking, they couldn't be compared to this matchmaker. Young Master Yu couldn't help but feel pity. Any man wouldn't let go of such a high-quality girl. But he didn't dare to compete with Jing Taiyang. He had seen Jing Taiyang's strength with his own eyes. A local century-old clan had 3 legendary experts, but Jing Taiyang walked over and slashed their necks with a knife. That action and attitude were no different from killing chickens. And the reason was just because the 3 of them blocked his way. This was a super strong man. Hong Yang stuck to Jing Taiyang's side as if she had no bones. She gently scratched his chest with her fingernails and whispered in his ear, "Big Brother Jing, do you know any other friends here?" "Friends? My martial brothers are all in Shenangjia. How can I have friends here? Fortunately, they are not here. Otherwise, such a stunning beauty like you might not be my turn." Jing Taiyang laughed without any scruples. "Is that so? Then Xiaonu can rest assured." Hong Yang smiled mysteriously and used a little strength in her hand. Her fingernails immediately scratched a shallow wound on Jing Taiyang's chest. She licked her tongue in an extremely charming manner and said, "Does it hurt?" "Haha, it doesn't hurt. It's a small matter." Jing Taiyang still attacked Hong Yang lustfully. As a cultivator, getting injured was a common thing, especially since the Thousand Blades sex cultivation method was special. They would get injured every few days, so they were already used to it. This little wound was nothing to them. However, just as she finished speaking, Jing Taiyang's eyes suddenly became dazzled. The qi in his body actually began to stagnate. He suddenly quivered and forced himself to stand up. Even if he was a perverted ghost, he also realized that there was something wrong with this woman. "You, who the hell are you?" Jing Taiyang's footsteps were a bit unsteady as he pointed at Hong Yang and asked, TSK, as expected of an early-stage foundation establishment expert from the Archaic Alliance. "You're actually able to stand up after taking our latest biochemical medicine. Amazing." Hong Yang's expression was unfathomable as she smiled. At the same time, the floor-to-ceiling window on the side shattered with a bang, and 4 black-clothed men flew in one after the other. Each of them was a heaven stage great perfection expert. And without saying a word, they surrounded Jing Taiyang. As for young Master Yu and the other women, they didn't even have time to scream before they were instantly silenced. This scene happened so suddenly that Jing Taiyang was completely unprepared. As an early-stage foundation establishment expert from the Archaic Alliance, he should have been an invincible existence in the secular world. Who would have thought that he would become someone else's prey? Including Hong Yang, there were a total of 5 heaven stage great perfection experts surrounding him. Normally, Jing Taiyang would definitely scoff at this. Although there was only one level difference between the early stage foundation establishment and the heaven stage great perfection experts, the difference between them was like heaven and earth. In particular, Jing Taiyang was a core disciple of the Thousand Blades sect, and his strength was outstanding among the experts of the same level. Not to mention 1 against 5, 1 against 10 was a piece of cake. However, his current situation was really not optimistic. He was blinded by lust, and was poisoned by Hong Yang's biochemical medicine. The qi in his body became stagnant. At this moment, it was difficult for him to even stand, so how much strength could he have? Who the hell are you? Jing Taiyang once again opened his mouth with difficulty. You really don't want to give up. At this time, you still want to talk nonsense to buy time, and still want to escape from under our hands? Hong Yang simply ignored his question, and directly signaled everyone to attack together. Although the plan was already in the bag at this step, Jing Taiyang was an early-stage foundation establishment expert after all. No one knew what other powerful and fatal trump cards he was hiding, so they must not relax until the last moment. As the trump card group that the headquarters of the secular world valued most, every member of the hunter group was the super elite of the super elite. The strength of the heaven stage great perfection was only the minimum threshold, and the other aspects must be the most top-notch existence. The most important reference condition was the temperament. It was simply a fool's dream to expect them to underestimate the enemy and make a big mistake. Seeing these people directly attack without hesitation, Jing Taiyang's heart suddenly sank. As Hong Yang said, he really thought so. He didn't know what the biochemical medicine was, but he could roughly guess that it must be some kind of poison, and it should not be directly fatal, but it could only block the circulation of the qi in the body. Of course, for an early-stage foundation establishment expert like him, this poison was actually no different from a fatal one. With his qi blocked, he could not exert his strength at all, and in front of the opponent, he was a lamb waiting to be slaughtered. However, he did not intend to be captured so easily. His strategy of stalling time was seen through by the opponent. Jing Taiyang clenched his teeth and suddenly raised his hand to wave at the nearest Hong Yang. Out of nowhere, a soft sword of neither long nor short appeared in his hand. In this situation, he could not mobilize much qi, but this sword was still enough to turn the situation around. Every disciple of the Thousand Blades sect was a weapon master, and the sword was the leader of all weapons. Even if Jing Taiyang's sword art was not at the master level, it was definitely at a higher level. The most important thing was that this sword came very suddenly. The biochemical medicine was the main culprit of his current desperate situation, but at this moment, it also became the best cover for him. No matter how good the psychological quality of the Central Hunter Group was, when faced with a target that was hit, they would subconsciously relax a little. This was a human's instinct. Good sword art, but unfortunately it is not fast enough. At the last moment, Hong Yang grabbed the blade with one hand. It looked like she was wearing an ordinary glove, but it was one of the latest products of the central headquarters, and it was enough to deal with any cold weapon attack. Jing Taiyang's face darkened. If the qi in his body could circulate normally, Hong Yang would have been a dead person at this time. Unfortunately, there was no if in this world. Without the support of the most important qi, his sword art was useless. No matter how good it was, whether it was speed or power, it was far from enough. After all, the opponent was an expert at the heaven stage great perfection, not an ordinary person. Chapter 51-21. However, at this moment, A silver needle that was hard to see with the naked eye suddenly silently pierced Hong Myong's neck from behind. It was glowing with a faint green light, clearly carrying a highly toxic poison. Looking at Hong Myong's oblivious expression, Jing Taiyang was overjoyed. Success! The symbol of the Thousand Blades sect had never been a single weapon, but the legendary Thousand Blades, shooting at the same time. Even for an early-stage foundation establishment expert like Jing Taiyang, it was common for him to control 7 or 8 blades at the same time in battle. Now that his true qi was obstructed, the 8 blades shooting at the same time, which he was most adept at, was no longer possible. However, relying on the meager amount of true qi that he could barely mobilize, it was enough for him to control a tiny poisonous needle. Go to hell! Seeing that he was about to succeed, Jing Taiyang's mouth couldn't help but curl up. No matter what, it was an unforgivable shame for an early-stage foundation establishment expert like him to fall into the hands of a secular world organization. Instead of waiting to be captured, it was better for him to die. Moreover, it wasn't impossible for him to escape. As long as he could successfully kill Hong Myong, Jing Taiyang would be able to deter the other 4 people. At the very least, he would be able to create chaos, and perhaps he would have a chance to escape. Ding! A crisp sound of metal colliding caused Jing Taiyang's heart to sink to the bottom. Whether it was Hong Myong or the other 4 people, none of them were aware of his small action. The poison needle had indeed successfully hit Hong Myong's neck, but unfortunately, it didn't penetrate her skin. How is this possible? Jing Taiyang couldn't help but be stunned. He simply couldn't imagine why Hong Myong's skin was made of metal. One of the latest research results of the central headquarters was tempered skin. As a member of the Ancient Alliance, he would never be able to understand it. Hong Myong didn't answer. She turned sideways and directly kneed him. Feeling the sharp pain coming from his abdomen, Jing Taiyang instantly curled up like a shrimp and flew out. Opportunity! Jing Taiyang endured the pain, and his eyes lit up. Even in this situation, he didn't give up the idea of escaping. Borrowing the momentum from Hong Myong's kick, he suddenly rushed out of the floor-to-ceiling window. Jumping from the 24th floor of the Shui Hung building was tantamount to courting death. But he was an early-stage foundation establishment expert from the Ancient Alliance. How could he die so easily? However, it turned out that Jing Taiyang was thinking too much. The moment he rushed out of the French window, the 4 black-clothed men moved at the same time. A giant net then firmly covered him, and then tightened. When he was pulled out again, his whole body had been squeezed into a ball, completely unable to move. Hong Myong looked at this scene expressionlessly. She spoke into the communication device implanted in her head. The target has been captured successfully. Hunter Group, return to the team. One day later, Hong Myong and the other 4 returned to the central headquarters. Jing Taiyang was sent to the laboratory as soon as he got off the plane. A group of mad scientists had already been waiting for him, their prey. This was the first sample of the ancient research group since its establishment. As a peripheral researcher, Brother Dafeng was not qualified to enter the core laboratory, but he could see from afar. Looking at the unconscious Jing Taiyang, he couldn't help but be shocked. Even an early-stage foundation establishment expert was captured. The central headquarters was really cruel. He was very anxious now. Ever since he learned about the purpose of the ancient research group, he knew that it was absolutely a great event for both the Ancient Alliance and the secular world. Judging from the way the central headquarters operated, the possibility of success was extremely high. Once a large number of Ancient Alliance experts were controlled, not only would it have a huge impact on the Ancient Alliance, but it would also inevitably affect the secular world. More specifically, it would inevitably involve Lin Yi. Therefore, no matter what, he had to pass this information to Lin Yi as soon as possible. But the problem was that he was now trapped in the central headquarters and couldn't move around, let alone communicate with the outside world. How could he pass the information? As the most important and core plan of the central headquarters in the secular world, the moment Jing Taiyang was transported back, the entire central headquarters was completely busy. Lan Xiaoru personally led the Glasses Doctor and the others into action. This was the first step of the ancient plan, and there was no room for error. At the same time, the hunter group led by Hong Nyang was not idle. They were analyzing the information and looking for the next target. If they could find a second single early-stage foundation establishment expert like Jing Taiyang, as long as the plan was as thorough as this time, the possibility of them failing was very small. Of course, if the other party's strength was stronger than the early-stage foundation establishment, then they would have to wait until they completely controlled Jing Taiyang before acting together. With their strength at the peak of heaven stage, capturing an early-stage foundation establishment expert was already their limit. It was very difficult to have any confidence in capturing someone stronger than this. 2 days later, the hunter group locked onto the target and attacked again. The target was the early-stage foundation establishment, and they succeeded. 3 days later, the hunter group attacked again, but this time they brought Jing Taiyang, who had been completely brainwashed by the central headquarters. The target was the early-stage foundation establishment, and they succeeded. Another 3 days later, the hunter group, together with Jing Taiyang, and 2 other successfully brainwashed early-stage foundation establishment experts, attacked again. The target was the peak early-stage foundation establishment, and they succeeded. In less than 10 days, 4 experts of the Archaic Alliance had fallen into the hands of the central headquarters. One was at the peak of the early-stage foundation establishment realm, and the other 3 were at the early-stage foundation establishment realm. Such an astonishing efficiency left Brother Dafeng dumbfounded. If this continued, it wouldn't be long before the Archaic Alliance experts, scattered in the secular world, were like turtles in a jar. Not only that, but what shocked Brother Dafeng even more was that after these foundation establishment experts fell into the control of the central headquarters, they could actually increase their strength rapidly in just a few days. He still didn't know that this technology was already very mature for the central headquarters. The secular world was just using the basic technology of Heaven Stage Island. From the beginning, what limited the strength of the central headquarters in the secular world was not the technology, but the experimental samples. As long as the experimental samples had a strong enough foundation and potential, with their technology and resources, they could create a large number of foundation establishment experts in a very short period of time. Now that the ancient plan had been launched, and after obtaining these foundation establishment experts from the Ancient Alliance, it was only natural for them to increase their strength. After witnessing this series of terrifying developments, Big Brother Dafeng was now horrified. If this continued, the Archaic Alliance and the secular world would not just suffer a blow. Even as a peripheral researcher who occasionally helped out, Big Brother Dafeng could more or less sense the ambition of the central headquarters. That woman, Lan Xiaoru, was definitely after something big. The more he sensed all this, the more anxious Brother Dafeng became. However, no matter how anxious he was, it was useless. He had no chance to send a message. In fact, Brother Dafeng was not the only one who was anxious. Linny was also very anxious. He was at a loss about everything that had happened recently. After all, the Ancient Alliance experts scattered all over the secular world were extremely secretive. Not only could the Ancient Alliance not contact them, but even the Supernatural Investigation Bureau could not find any traces of them. The Central Hunter Group had always been meticulous, so he naturally did not notice them. Laney was most worried that Brother Dafeng would reveal a flaw in the central headquarters. In order to be able to receive him at any time, he specially stayed nearby. In the end, after half a month, there was still no news of Brother Dafeng. Did something happen to him? In the transfer station of the Primordial Passage, there was a flash of light, and a young man dressed in white suddenly appeared in the transmission array. His eyes were cold and without the slightest hint of emotion, giving off the feeling that he was an emotionless ice man, causing people to feel fear at first sight. Chapter 51-22. Her name was Bing Wuqing. In terms of age, she was not much older than Xue Jianfeng. In fact, she was even a few years younger. However, her strength was there for all to see. Even Xue Jianfeng could only pinch his nose and call her uncle master. The so-called number 1 foundation establishment cultivator of the Archaic Alliance was nothing in front of Bing Wuqing, because that title was left over from her playing. 2 generations of the number 1 foundation establishment cultivators had come from the Snow Sword faction. From this point alone, the Snow Sword faction's foundation was indeed extraordinary. In the entire Archaic Alliance, it was a top-notch existence among the 10 small sects and clans. If they had 1 or 2 more nascent soul cultivators, it would not be impossible for them to challenge the 4 major sects and clans. However, this was not a good thing for Xue Jianfeng. He had always considered himself the successor of the Snow Sword faction. With such an uncle master above him, no matter who it was, they would not be in a good mood. If it was possible, Xue Jianfeng would definitely not let the higher-ups send such an uncle master. It was a pity that his father was only the deputy head of the Snow Sword faction. Although his status and power in the Snow Sword faction were not low, it was far from the point where he could cover the sky with one hand. Moreover, Cold's master was not an ordinary person. He would definitely try to argue for what was right. In the end, the Snow Sword faction sent Bing Wuqing, who was more neutral, to balance the situation. Bing Wuqing looked at Xue Jianfeng expressionlessly and said in a cold voice, "From today onwards, all the disciples of the Snow Sword faction who are training are under my command. You are no longer the leader." "Yes, I understand." Xue Jianfeng nodded hurriedly. He did not dare to be presumptuous in front of Bing Wuqing. Moreover, this was his suggestion from the beginning. Ever since he fought with Lin Yi, he knew that he had no hope of revenge with his own strength. Therefore, he could only think of a way to ask for help from the Snow Sword faction. Of course, this wasn't something they could ask for help just because they wanted to. If there wasn't a good reason, then they wouldn't be able to get past the Archaic Alliance. The reason Xue Jianfeng gave was that his Dantian had been crippled, and there was no one among the disciples of the Snow Sword School who could take his place as the eldest senior disciple. Without a leader, it would be easy for something to happen. So he asked the Snow Sword School to get rid of another senior disciple. The reason sounded reasonable, so the Archaic Alliance did not stop it, and allowed the Snow Sword faction to send out Bing Wuqing, the uncle master leading the team again. There was only one condition, and that was that Bing Wuqing could only lead the disciples of her own Snow Sword faction. She was not allowed to order the disciples of other archaic sects around, and she was not allowed to fight for power with Xianigia. After all, Xianigia was the recognized rightful uncle master leading the team in the secular world. "Where's Lung Lung? Call her over," Bing Wuqing said directly. Other than leading the disciples of the Snow Sword faction for the training, she had another important mission, which was to send Lung Lung back to the archaic underworld. The sect's life was greater than the sky. Ever since they found out that Lung Lung had disobeyed the order, the senior disciples of the Snow Sword faction had been quarreling like a pot of porridge. The 2 factions had a small quarrel every day, and a big quarrel every 3 days. Vice leader Xue swore to punish Lung Lung to avenge her son, while Lung Lung's master argued with reason every time. But no matter what the final outcome was, there was one thing that couldn't be discussed, and that was that Lung Lung had to be sent back as soon as possible. Otherwise, her continuous disobedience would be seen as a traitor, and even Lung Lung's master would not be able to save her. I'm afraid it's not possible." Xue Jianfeng shook his head, looking troubled. "What's not possible?" Bing Wuqing frowned slightly. Regarding the matter of Lung Lung, he did not have a clear stance. He was purely carrying out orders. As long as Lung Lung was sent back to the archaic underworld, no matter what the final outcome was, it would have nothing to do with him. She has now completely betrayed the sect. Unless we use force as a senior brother, there's no way I can summon her. Xue Jianfeng laughed bitterly, then added, "Even if it's Master Bing's order, I'm afraid she won't listen to it." Really? Bing Wuqing's aura was already extremely cold to begin with, and this time, the temperature dropped even further. Even Xue Jianfeng subconsciously hugged his arms tightly. Seeing is believing. It's a waste of my words here. Why don't you make a trip there yourself, Master Bing? We'll know if it's true or not. Xue Jianfeng's tone was rather sincere, and he looked fair and objective. He did not have the slightest intention of slandering Lung Lung. Bing Wuqing glanced at him. Although he did not have a clear stance, if Lung Lung really dared to disobey his orders, then she would undoubtedly be Bing Wuqing's enemy. When dealing with traitorous disciples, Bing Wuqing's principle had always been to kill without mercy. All right, lead the way. Bing Wuqing's eyes narrowed into thin slits. Yes, Master Bing, please follow me. Xue Jianfeng nodded repeatedly, and at the same time he was overjoyed. He knew that with Lin Yi's stubbornness, he would never hand Lung Lung over to the Snow Sword School easily. And with Bing Wuqing's character, she might just make a move at any time. She was a true early-stage gold elixir expert, and Lin Yi was nothing in front of her. Under Xue Jianfeng's lead, Bing Wuqing soon arrived at the small island assigned to the Blue Cloud sect on the North Island. At this time, Xian Yijie was personally explaining the entry-level mental cultivation method to a few prospective disciples. When he looked up, he saw Bing Wuqing coming toward him with a cold aura, and he immediately frowned. Bing Wuqing, what are you doing here? Xian Yijie was slightly stunned. The circle of the small Jianghu in the far ancient era was not as big as that of the Heaven-level island. The Blue Cloud sect and the Snow Sword School were both part of the 10 small sects and families, so they had a lot of communication in various aspects. Moreover, he and Bing Wuqing were both early-stage gold elixir experts, so naturally, they had met several times. Hand Lung Lung over. Bing Wuqing had no intention of making small talk with him, and directly demanded Lung Lung Lung. What do you mean? Coming here to ask for Lung Lung? Bing Wuqing, aren't you being too arrogant? Xian Yijie's face darkened. Although they were both early-stage gold elixir experts, in terms of experience, he was far more experienced than Bing Wuqing. Moreover, he was the master uncle who was leading the team in the secular world this time. So Bing Wuqing had no reason to ignore him. Hand Lung Lung over. Bing Wuqing repeated herself, and just stared at Xian Yijie expressionlessly. Her attitude was so tough that it was a complete mess. Xue Jianfeng, who was standing at the side, could not help but feel pleased when he saw this scene. Although Bing Wuqing was not the same kind of person as him, it was really delightful to see Xian Yijie, the old bastard, being humiliated. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.